I recommend blueberries to keep your blood sugars up, Marion.
Today, darling, I'm doing a total fast.
Oh my.
It's called desperation.
Kate Wilson said she might be a bit late.
Okay. Anyway, to those who might have heard my news this morning, good news, my daughter-in-law is out of surgery.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Yeah, which is good news. Yeah. Well, I didn't personally do it.
We
So
are
that's
live
Gary
on
going-
YouTube right now, just so
Yeah.
you know.
Thank you, love.
Gary's, I gather, he was waiting with his mother for the doctor to come,
Right.
which could take some time, but he was hoping to join us late, but I don't think that's going to be happening.
No, and he's got other things on his mind, I think, as well. All right, people, it is now 1 o'clock, and I declare the council meeting of the 22nd of April open. Just want to remind us all that it's not a workshop, and we do have the public in attendance. And I think we had 500 views of us in the end. People have thought I think people must be desperately bored during the Rahui, and not only watching us on live now, that's not being bored, but watching us later.
Les Mills session's finished.
Good.
Nothing to do.
Right. Oh, okay. Second thing is communication. I don't know where Michael Laws is, but what I need to help with is actually being able to see or hear them. So any help that you can give me, Liz, when they want to ask questions.
Okay.
And the other thing I want to say to you people, as I noticed last time, it is far easier if you communicate with me through the chat box down below than by sending emails to me, because I don't have the email system open, because I can watch, I am a limited person. I can watch only so many boxes at once. So if there's something you desperately want to tell me, if you've got problems with using Zoom or whatever, as obviously Michael Laws had, then can you communicate through Liz or through his BCL? Liz?
No, through me, please.
Through Liz. Okay, loves. Apologies. It's from Gary, who's caring for his mother at the moment in serious situations. The attendance, I think it's best if I go through and call out your names and you say yes. So Hilary Calvert.
Yes.
Michael Deaker.
Yes.
Alexa.
Yes.
Marion Hobbs. Carmen.
Yes, I'm happy to move that apology too from Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, dear. Gary, for whom we've got an apology. Michael Laws. Not yet. Kevin.
Present and second that motion.
Thank you, Kevin. Andrew Noon.
Yes. Yes.
Gretchen. Brian Scott.
Yes.
And Kate Wilson.
Yes, Mrs. Hobbs. I can't help myself. It's like doing school roll.
Exactly. It's no difference. Except I probably did it much faster. Actually, I never did school roll. I just look around the room, but it's harder on here. Okay. Somebody moved and seconded the acceptance of the apologies for Gary. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. What was that? Never mind. The conflicts of interest, well, if you go through confirmation of the agenda, you'll see that we've got minutes, reports, we've got the Eco Fund, we've got transfer of building functions, making plan change 6AA operative, the biosecurity operational plan, the RPS, that's the regional policy statement, review, how we handle that, and then a progress report to the Minister for the Environment. From my thingamajig, I don't think there's anyone has any issues on conflicts of interest. Are there? No?
I presume that Andrew and I may stand out of the conversation on the dams.
Absolutely.
On the 6AA plan?
No, on the dam
On
building
the dam?
Hearing.
hearing.
What dam hearing? Oh, I know what you're talking about. Sorry, love. My apologies. Okay.
Take
Yes.
too.
Thank you, Kate, for that. Okay, confirmation of minutes, the minutes of the 9th of April meeting. And I understand that there is an amendment that wants to be made. But can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes first?
I'll move it.
Hillary, and a
I'll
seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael. Dika?
And-
Okay.
Ma-
Any-
And Madam Chair, I'm not sure whether you can hear me, whether I'm on mute. No, I'm not. Okay.
Hang on, you go.
So, hey, look, I flicked through the amendment, which really is just associated with the preamble above the motion. And the main reason for suggesting that amendment was very much if someone picked up the minutes in years to come who didn't understand the background in the discussion, it was really just to help to clarify what motivated the motion. So that's really all I need to say.
Okay, are people happy with it's in paragraph 2, I understand, on notification plan change 8?
Correct.
Yeah, it said Councillor Noon said, and you have reworked that.
Yeah, do you want me to read it out, or is
Be
everyone?
useful, love. Be useful.
Okay. Okay, so the first bit is essentially what I'm going to read out replaces the first couple of sentences. So Councillor Noon said staff and consultants were working to a tight time frame. However, plan change 8 and 1 require an additional layer of scrutiny via consultation with sector parties to help to achieve a more efficient plan process and to ease buy-in and implementation. He stated that consultation with sector parties had been limited and these parties were keen to engage. And then it goes back to Liz's circulated minutes. Councillor Noon made a motion, da-da-da.
Okay. Anyone got any problems with amending those minutes?
No,
Okay, shall we accept, can you move the amendment, Andrew, and can I have a seconder?
Also move.
Can I have a seconder for that movement?
Yep.
Yes, I'll do it.
Yep, thank you, Kate. All those in favour of Andrew's amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried. Now, anything further on the minutes? That being so, we have a mover and a seconder for the minutes as being accurate. All those in favour, please say aye.
aye, aye,
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we're back then to the, oh, no, we're not. Okay, so we're now up to the action status of council resolutions. Are there any questions there?
No.
Can I just check something, Liz? No, Sarah. When is our next council meeting?
We have a committee meeting on I think it's the 13th of May, and then it's about the 27th of May that we have our next
Full council meeting.
Mhm.
Okay,
Lead at the end of May.
so I just want to say to people under decision-making structure and to bring in Amanda on that I think in the next 6 weeks, will be 4 weeks, I'll be talking to you again. Remember about the committees, whether we want those committees to exist or whatever, or any change, and just a number of issues, just a heads up, so that we'll have that ready to come to council at the end of May. All right. Any other questions on outstanding actions? There being none, we move.
Me.
Who's me?
Hillary.
Oh, sorry, Hillary. Go for it.
The delegations review, early 2020. Are we early 2020 yet?
Sarah, would you like to comment?
Yes, we have been working on that, but Richard is one of the key people involved in that, and of course he's been doing the group controller role for CDM, so we have not yet progressed it to a conclusion.
It might be
Have you
well
got
worth to put
Sorry, the status you've got, if I may, Marion,
Yeah.
the status you've got them as is underway for reporting in early 2020, so that's not right. So what would it be?
I
The status?
think we can probably come back in June. I just need to make sure that we are reasonable in terms of the time we need, given that a large portion of it is around Richard's area, and that's why he's been leading that work.
Is it acceptable?
June.
Yep, we'll put that in there. Okay, as a change. Any further questions to outstanding actions? There being none, let's go back to the agenda. And we're up to Chairperson's report. I think it was remarkably brief. Any questions? Right. Can I go to the Chief Executive's report? We're both going to have to go to an optician following this. The number of Zoom meetings. I don't know how you do this, the person who lives by this, Councillor Forbes. I don't know how you actually Zoom non-stop all the time. 4 hours, 5 hours, it does me in. Okay, no questions?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, please.
Sorry, who's the please?
Oh,
Councillor
sorry,
Miller.
that was me. I was just trying to work out how to get my little tag up. Hey, sorry, it was a question for the Chief Executive, for Sarah, and it actually relates to the EPA letter that was dated the 20th, I think, of the month. And I know it doesn't actually fit into this council round, but I just wondered whether Sarah was willing to take a question on that. And the question relates to the Friends of Submitters aspect.
I mean, it's Chair's discretion, but I'm happy to answer a question if the Chair is.
Yep, you go for it.
Okay, so in the letter, Sarah, EPA talked about the opportunity to use the technique Friends of Submitters, which obviously there is some requirement for ORC to agree to that. And in your response, you said that you would consider it. So I just have two questions. One was, are you able to, in a practical sense, indicate what that technique, Friends of Submitters, how that works?
Mhm.
And the second part of that is, if it falls upon the ORC to provide the resource, etc., for that to happen, are you able and willing to provide that?
Sure.
Sarah.
So the Friend of Submitter concept was actually born out of collaboration between Contact Energy and EPA right at the very beginning of the EPA. The idea around the Friend of Submitter is that because the EPA is a centrally located organisation in Wellington, at the time where there is a submission period, it can be useful to have a key contact who may or may not be someone who's in Otago, that people can contact to get process advice on about this process that they might be wanting to enter through making a submission. It's not about advising on content of submissions in any way. It's not about writing a submission for anyone, but it is about being able to answer process questions if people have them. Because normally what would happen is the EPA, if we were in a board of inquiry process, the EPA would make the appointment of the Friend of Submitter. But because we're going through an environment court process, my understanding of what they're saying in that letter of yesterday is that we would need to make those arrangements. I think that there is a benefit in having that kind of service available, so long as the person that undertakes the service completely understands what the role is intended to be. It doesn't extend to giving advice on the content of a submission, that's all.
All right, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Could we
Councillor
just,
Scott and then Councillor Calvert.
just another question on that
No,
one?
no, no, hang on, speed up. Oh, on that question. Oh, sorry, Hilary, go ahead.
Just what sort of cost is it, Sarah?
In my previous role for the EPA, I would negotiate a flat rate. It's difficult sometimes to understand how much that person will be used or not used. So rather than negotiating an hourly rate, I normally would suggest that for the period of the submission period, you paid a flat fee. Things may have changed, but that was normally upwards of $10,000 to $15,000.
Just
Thank
because
you.
it's something that sort of at some level staff would have done usually.
Well, some of the benefits of the friend submitter is that you usually don't have a staff member performing the role because that person's able to be viewed with some level of independence.
Okay, thank you. Brian Scott.
Yeah, no, thank you. I've got a question that follows on from our discussion in the workshop this morning, and it's about what our council staff are doing in relation to civil defence and the whole COVID-19 support mechanism and keeping essential services going, this type of thing. That in terms of the governance role that we do, it's actually hard to know how well we're performing. And my question to the CE is, you know, is it appropriate to at some point set out some targets so that at least there's some accountability and discussion around those targets so that governance can have some indication of whether there are really issues or not. Any comment there? How okay, a lot of this work reports to the mayors, but nevertheless, there's some connection there with the ORC governance. It's our staff. It impacts upon our reputation and the other work that we need to do. How do we know, you know, how well the performance is actually going? How would you address that?
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes, I think it's really important to understand there is a level of separation between the function that we perform under the CDM Act and the functions we perform as ORC, the Regional Council. And so the governance comes through not the Mural Forum, but the Coordinated Executive Group, which is the group of officials, council CEs for Otago and others from key agencies like MSD. And then that reports up to what's called the Joint Committee, which is all of the mayors and our chair who sit on the Joint Committee. And,
Okay.
and through the legislation, that is where the decision making goes. Now, I understand that you have an interest, of course.
Yeah, so how do they know
and I
that you're operating?
It would become fairly evident. One of the things that we have at all times during the response is we have a person who works with us from the National Emergency Management Agency directly, and they report up to national level. And particularly in this situation, this is a national event. It's not a group event or a local event in any case. And so ultimately, the person who has control of the event is Sarah Stewart-Black, the National Director for NEMA. And we take direction from her about the sorts of roles and responsibilities we should have. And so in effect, if you like, NEMA would evaluate our performance. Of course, on a day-to-day basis, if there are issues between, say, for example, territorial authorities and the way that group is managing things, then that's likely to be escalated to me as the chair of the coordinating executive group before it would be escalated to the Joint Committee if that was necessary. So that's kind of how the structure works. That said, I think there'd be no issue with at some point having Richard come and just give you a bit of a briefing about things, how things have worked and some of the challenges or otherwise we've had in that role.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that? And that is that I must do 1, 2, 3 of these sorts of meetings every week with CDM, and I'm kind of watching Richard, and I'm not nastily, and I'm also hearing back from the mayors any concerns or issues they have with how CDM is meeting their needs. And remember, this is much wider than, because we had social responsibilities and all sorts of issues like that. So for an example, when the Mayor of Queenstown got quite agitated at a meeting on last Friday, what followed quickly was a meeting on Saturday, and we had Sarah Stewart-Black on, the lead CDM, the lead emergency person from New Zealand. We had MSD, we had the police, we had medical people. We had everyone there to answer all the questions. And it was a very successful meeting in terms of having people understand. Okay.
Yeah, though when I look at the chair's report, I just wonder if there's an opportunity to flesh that out for the next meeting so that we, you know.
I definitely will, dear. I'm sorry. That report was written, God knows. I will.
Yeah, no, well done. Thank you.
Okay, can somebody move, please, that both these reports are accepted?
Happy to.
And that
Second.
was, and seconded was Andrew. That was Carmen, wasn't it? Carmen and Andrew.
was.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against, no. And if you're against it, could you wave or do something? No. Right. That's carried. So can we move now to Echo Fund applications? And its author is Lisa, and it's got Sally with us. Lisa, are you here? No. Lisa, oh, Lisa. No, Lisa Gloag. So, all right.
Yeah,
Do you
Madam
want to
Chair,
move the chair? Yeah.
I'm very happy to move the recommendations spelled out under 8.1. I think that's on page 18 of the agenda.
Yes,
No,
it is.
Yeah, okay. And after somebody seconds that, I'd like to make some comments. So is there a seconder for that?
Happy to. Happy to,
Thanks,
if that's all
Carmen.
right with you,
Thanks, Carmen.
Councillor Malcolm.
Okay, that's lovely.
Delighted to, really.
Off you go, Michael.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thanks to a fair number of people, the staff team who did all the organisation and did the initial assessment of all the 24 applications. And that was Shade and Bex and Richard and Pete. And they were ably helped in the background by Diane Railton. I also want to thank, of course, Carmen and Kevin, who were with me on the overall assessment panel. All three of us independently assessed every application. And I must say, with a remarkable level of accord too, we had very few disagreements about the value of all the 24 applications. I note that Councillor Kelleher, Gary, for reasons we all know, did not play a part. And I want to acknowledge the fact that Councillor Kate Wilson came in at very late notice and offered to fill in for Councillor Kelleher. That was a very generous and humane thing to do, Kate, and I thank you for that offer. Now going back to the recommendations that have been moved and seconded, I think it's all pretty clear. Quite a number of applications did not make the cut. We stretched the money to its limit, as you can see, up to 132,000 plus a few. And that's all that we had available. In fact, we overstepped the mark a little bit and had to cut a few dollars off a couple of these successful applications. But that's the way it washed up after very careful assessment. But I just also want to note, Madam Chair, recommendation 3, the Southern Great Lakes Program was an application that came in from Dr. Mark Schellenberg of the Otago University Department of Zoology. Our feeling was that that was a particularly worthy application. It's looking for about $18,000 from the Eco Fund to help with the putting together of a submission to MBIE for a major piece of work on Wanaka, Wakatipu and Hawea in terms of their ecological health and future. We couldn't see it being funded out of the Eco Fund, not because of its scale. We can do 18,000, and we did in some of those big applications, but it did not involve any community participation. And of course, that's what the Eco Fund is all about. This application from Dr. Schellenberg was to help him in liaison with some other academics and on the ground researchers up in the Great Lakes area to put forward a proposition to a government department, ministry in this case. So we put it to one side and decided to word it in the way that you see it in front of you there for the whole council to consider as to whether there would be some other way of funding this application. So I leave it at that. It's a request for the CE and the staff to see whether there is any resource available to assist Dr. Schellenberg through some other avenue than the Eco Fund. So having said all that, Madam Chair, I'm sorry I took so long. I'll leave it to others to discuss now.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any further discussions or questions? Councillor Scott.
Yes, it was an aligned matter about the Eco Fund I wanted to talk about, as opposed to specifically these. Is it appropriate to talk at this time?
Can you just hold it, because I
Yeah.
think there are the applications to, you know, agree to, and there's a question about the Southern Great Lakes program, and then
Yeah.
your question.
Thank you.
Is that all right?
Thank you.
So
Right.
in the general comments, I can see you, Councillor Noon, waving something at me.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, firstly, just want to acknowledge Councillor Deaker and Hope and Malcolm's contribution, and obviously with the staff, it's a huge effort to get to the point they're at. My question was really for Sarah and whether she wanted to comment on the third recommendation and just whether she had any views on it.
Sarah? Unmute, Sarah. Unmute. Thank you.
Sorry. Through the chair, please could I defer that to Gwyneth Elsom, who will be able to help with that.
Yep. Sure. So we've had some discussions internally. We've actually been developing up an MOU with Catchments Otago, which is part of Otago University. It's with them at the moment to sign, and we'd be proposing that would be the best vehicle to take this application and discuss whether it's progressed further. The idea of the MOU is precisely this kind of thing. It'd be looking at the two organisations jointly identifying research needs and working out how to collaboratively progress them.
That's
How
very
long will
good.
that take?
As I said, the MOU is with them to sign. Obviously, we can have discussions starting straight away about this particular application. But yeah, we're awaiting their signature on the MOU.
That seems good to me. Does it seem okay to you, Kevin? No, not Kevin. Oh, God. Councillor Noon, Andrew.
My only follow-up question would be that MOU, I imagine, will talk about partnership funding. So on that basis, I would imagine that the Otago Regional Council would still be looking at making some contribution if it, favourably progressed under a slightly different approach. Would that be fair enough?
Yes, in the sense that it's aimed at partnership collaboration. So the idea is that we're doing jointly funded research to get joint outcomes. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions of Councillor Forbes?
Actually, it's okay. Andrew's question was the one I was going to make as well. I wanted to hear staff input on that, and I really would like to see that program going forward. So I don't know how we get that into annual planning and so on at this point, but it'd be interesting to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Any other questions of Michael or staff on the recommendations in front of us? Now, I know that Brian wants to put up a motion. Brian, do you want to put that up motion before we actually go through the receives and the approves and the approves?
Well, it really, I think it would be good if I could talk to it, and then Councillor Deakin can come and may decide whether they simply want to add it as a fourth recommendation, yeah? Okay, can I talk to it?
Yes, you can.
Great. Okay, it was my intent to put a motion to increase the EcoFund to $1 million for the next funding round with particular consideration for virus hit communities. But after talking with Madam Chair, she's persuaded me, in fact, to seek a report on that particular matter. And so that effectively is my motion here today. I haven't organised the second. That would be up to councillors to vote or not. Within the scheme of things, it seems to me that this is a relatively non-significant increase from an existing and successful funding situation. It is a signal to our communities, it seems to me, that we are listening, that firstly, that some communities are hurting, and secondly, that we need to care for our environment. In my view, this is something we can get on with relatively immediately, independent of our annual plan process. And the intent is that when we look back in a number of years, ideally, we have made a positive difference. Anyway, so my motion is, and I seek a seconder, is to seek a report on increasing the ECO fund to $1 million or thereabouts for the next funding round with particular consideration for virus hit communities.
Is there a seconder for that? Which would
I'm
be
happy to
the-
second.
Yes.
That was Alexa. Okay. I can't see any problem with that according to our meeting rules.
For the next council meeting, ideally. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And that's been accepted. Okay. So,
Can-
yes. I just heard a
Can-
noise.
It's me, Hilary.
Oh, Hilary, sorry.
Would the mover be prepared to change that slightly to make sure that it's available, not necessarily just for eco? When you say an emphasis on that, to me, doesn't give the possibility of a report coming back that would widen that ability.
I mean, I'd be interested to see what other councillors would have to say about that. It seems to me that the scope of the Eco Fund should stay where it is. But, you know, when you sit down on the Eco Fund, you do get applications from geographically around the region. And you may find that, you know, particular emphasis is put on or consideration or leniency or whatever in an area that actually needs some support. But fundamentally, it's there for the betterment of the environment.
Right, Hilary? So it's staying as it is. Okay, let's see how we deal with this. First of all, who has moved and seconded that we receive this report?
I have,
Come on, Clement.
and it was seconded
I'm
by
seconding.
Carmen.
Okay, so that we receive this report, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? Carried. That we approve, it's also moved, Michael Carmen, the funding recommendation of the Eco Fund Decision Panel for the following applications, etc. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
against? So if I don't hear a no, I'll regard it as always as carried. That is carried. The third one is the approval for staff to seek an alternative funding option for ORC to support the work of the Southern Great Lakes Programme, as per the report of the Councillor Decision Programme. That was moved by you, Councillor Decker and Carmen.
That's right.
All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? That's carried. The fourth one was, could you read it out again, please?
Yes, that a report be prepared and received for the next council meeting regarding increasing the Eco Fund to $1 million for the next funding round, with particular consideration for virus hit communities.
And that was moved, Councillor Scott, Councillor Forbes. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? That's carried. Thank you very much, people, and thank you, Councillor Decker and the team and Kate for coming in. That's a good lot of work that's been done out there to our community. Now we come to the transfer of building functions. And this is being led by Joanna Gilroy, is it?
Myself and Joe, Mary.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Remote room. Richard, we've just been talking about you and whether you're working hard enough.
I heard you.
Okay. you
Yeah, look,
explain
thanks.
to us.
Afternoon, everybody. So this paper was scheduled for a previous council meeting, but was obviously pushed forward to this one. It's a piece of work that we feel is still in our interest to progress in the current circumstances. The only real update to the report since it was first drafted, and there is reference to it in there now, is we have had a recent audit from IANZ around our building functions, and that audit went very well. So we will retain the ability to provide these services up until the point if we choose to delegate them to Canterbury. So there's no risk to ORC currently. The team have done a lot of work to get our processes up and running and make them robust. The audit went well. It was done during lockdown, so it was done remotely, but the team did a good job to get through that. We are in a position where Southland and West Coast will be transferring their functions to Environment Canterbury. And I think that given that and looking at the data that we have pulled together over around the cost of maintaining accreditation for this function, it would make sense for Otago to also delegate that responsibility to Canterbury, and that would give us that regional centre of excellence, and it would just be a better financial outcome for ORC. So this report is just seeking the approval to commence the process. We do need to go through a consultative procedure and follow that as set out in the Act. So that is all that we are seeking approval for at the moment. There would be a further paper coming back to Council around the final decision to delegate those powers to Canterbury.
Okay, questions, and they're beginning with me.
Madam Chair.
I've got Hilary Calvert, I've got Malcolm, I've got myself, and I've got what do you call his name?
Kevin.
Bob?
Noon.
I need to, Kate and I need to sit out of this discussions. That's all I want to say.
Oh, sorry, Duff. Okay. So I just wanted to ask you, Richard, should it go across, should this task go across to Canterbury, Environment Canterbury? The people that we currently employ to do this work, are they going to be redeployed in another part? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So the people that currently undertake work sit within our consents team. So what it would do is it would give them more capacity to process consents within the consents team. So we wouldn't anticipate redeployment. We would just anticipate them spending their time processing resource consents. There are still some Building Act functions you'll notice in there we do need to deliver, and they would still be responsible for those, but it would free up some of their time to be processing resource consents.
Thank you. Hilary Calvert.
Just a quick sort of question relating to that partially. The plan would be to save us $210,000. Is that currently in the annual plan?
Yeah, it would be in there. It would be built in as our current operating costs. So if this transfer went through within the next financial year, we would expect to see some savings depending on the time frame at which we handed over that responsibility.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Malcolm. Kevin.
Richard, just a small question. The difference between a large dam and a not so large dam, where is the size boundary?
I can't give you the exact size boundary, but this only relates to large scale dams under the Building Act. So anything that is a smaller dam is still covered under our regional water plan, but isn't covered by the Building Act. So we will be transferring only what relates to the large dams under the Building Act.
Right. So just subsequent to that, Madam Chair, so the smaller dams that we possibly need consents for, we will still have the right accreditation and all that to do that without any worry?
Yes, we will.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your help.
Thanks, Kevin. Councillor Scott, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I haven't got a question. I was going to make express my view.
Yes,
so,
go for it.
And do that. Look, this is a step that I think to a certain degree we've resisted for a while as a council. You know, on the basis that it's great to have that local service in terms of the Otago region, and then eventually we pulled in the West Coast, we pulled in Southland. But I mean, the writing is on the wall. When you look at the numbers there, the reduction in numbers processed has significantly dropped off. And then the fixed cost of appliance has stayed there. And now I think what Richard is saying, that the West Coast and Southland are now leaving us. Look, we have no choice, I suspect, at the end of the day. And what is being asked here is simply the consultation in terms of that process. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for the 3 recommendations?
Yeah,
Happy
I'm
to
happy
move
to
it,
move.
Chair.
Oh, I heard Carmen, and then who else did I hear?
I'll do it.
Brian.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry, it's gone Carmen and it's gone Brian, moved and seconded. Right. It's all the noises off that kind of throw me every now and then. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? I declare that carried. Okay, thank you, Richard and Joanna.
Thank you.
So can we now go to making plan change 6AA operative?
Happy to move.
Well, hang on, give me time to keep my...
And I'll second. That's Hillary.
God save us. All right, we've got those people moving and seconding, but can I have, it's Gwyneth and Dolina?
Delina.
Delina, is that it? Sorry, Delina. Thank you. And Tom are here in terms of just taking us through it. Has anyone got any questions? Have they read the paper and have they any questions? There being none. So I have had a mover and that was Kate, and a seconder and that was Hillary.
Hillary.
And we have 5 recommendations.
Yep.
Receiving, approving minor changes, that was para 17. Approving the plan, affixing the council seal, and to make it publicly notified on the 9th of May. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against?
Bernard.
Did I hear an against? No. I declare that carried. Thank you. So we move to 2021 Biosecurity Operational Plan. And in here we have got Andrea and Richard and Gavin Palmer. Has anyone, oh well, first of all, can I have a mover and a seconder for the 4 motions, then we'll open up for discussion. A mover, Brian, and a seconder,
Happy to.
Carmen. Okay, can I open up for discussion or questions? Either. Kate, followed by Alexa, followed by Brian.
I'll preface this with the fact that I've spoken to both Gavin and Andrea, and I'm really excited to see this document. But the question is, when I read it, I was concerned with the word that we will implement it, because in reality, am I correct in believing we're the funder of it, and we'll expect other people, including the occupiers, to be the people who are actually on the ground implementing it?
Can I have a response, please, from Andrea or Richard or Gavin?
Through you, Madam Chair. So we have a range of, so it's a joint plan in that the community has obligations and so does the Otago Regional Council. And we have a range of management tools that we can deploy in terms of realising the plan. So facilitating education, engagement, understanding, right through to compliance activities. So it really requires us to partner with our communities and groups to deliver the outcomes in the plan.
Can I just do a follow-up on that, if you don't mind? If it were sometimes rabbits, then we won't be working with landowners, okay, or LINs or whomever. If it were something to do with there are things that grow alongside rivers. There are different plants. Then we're not necessarily talking about landowners. We might actually be the people who contract out to contractors. Is that correct? It's a range.
Yes, that's correct. So we have advocacy, education, inspection, monitoring, surveillance, collaboration with others, a requirement to act, and some direct service delivery. So on page 75 of your papers, it actually sets out the 5 management programs and the different management tools that we have available to us. So the second stage, I guess, once we have the high level direction of the operational plan confirmed, is the more detailed work around identifying the different stakeholders that we need to engage with to help either facilitate the right thing to be done, or to, in some exceptions, I guess, to deliver that ourselves, but mainly to provide the tools to enable people to do what's required.
Thank you. The second person was Alexa.
Yeah. So I'm just going to try and head back to where my notes were on this. I was actually, I can see why, but I'm actually a little bit disappointed in this. I kind of feel that the sustained pest control program in particular is just kind of weak. It's enforcing rules and working with communities the best we can do. That's what we've been doing. It doesn't seem to be anything really new. And I'll tell you what really worries me is that I can't see enough support to help, right? And that worries me that this won't achieve anything, because rabbits is an easy one, but you could easily say it for anything else as well. How do we actually actively and swiftly enforce in a way that's useful? And by that I mean the efforts of those who comply are almost completely wasted when there are any who don't comply. So it seems like we need something a bit different from what we've always done, but I'm really only seeing here an extension of what we've always done. Please enlighten me if I'm wrong.
So Richard Lord, do you want to respond to that? Or Gavin?
Perhaps, Madam Chair, if I could respond. Council's approaches and priorities and objectives have already been set. So Council has already signed off on its pest management plan. So this is really just some of the detail that sits below that. My other comment is that in respect of enforcement and approaches, we have some work underway at the moment, looking at our policies around that, the processes and the systems that support that. So that's another piece of work that we have underway at the moment.
Alexa?
Well, do we feel that this is actually going to deliver what we need to do? I mean, I realise that the pest management plan is signed off, but I'm suspecting that it may not be strong enough or good enough, and I don't know what we do about that.
Gavin?
Well, Madam Chair, all I can say is that, as Councillor Forbes has noted, the pest management plan's already been signed off, and that's the place where priorities and approaches and objectives are set. And this is just the operational plan that sits below that.
Just one more.
Can I make a comment?
Alexa, hang on, Brian.
Would we need, so we could, of course, potentially revisit that plan through a plan change if we really felt this wasn't achieving anything. Is that correct?
And could we do that within 6 months?
Probably not.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, you can review the plan and make plan changes at any time. Council is required to do it every 10 years, but if circumstances change or for any other reason, Council could choose to do that if it wished to.
Thank you. I saw Richard, and then I'll take Brian, Hilary. Yeah. Bob, Andrew. Okay, Richard, you wanted to say something.
Yes, if I could just make one response, please, through Madam Chair to Councillor Forbes. The last plan we had in place was we took one major step out of that, which really was a big stalling point for us, and that was for any action we wish to take, we sought a property management plan from the landowner, and it really impeded our ability to take any action. That step has been taken right out of the equation now, which means we can go straight to notice of direction, which is a big step forward. And if we needed to do so, I see that as a gigantic step forward and being able to get compliance from landowners.
Thank you. Can I go to Brian, then Hilary, then Andrew, then me? Okay.
Yeah, I was involved in the portfolio group along with Gary and Marion, and we had 2 or 3 meetings, and I distributed the notes. And I think what Alexa's asked, is a key question. If we go back to the plan, as Richard has just said, with rabbits, there have been a number of fundamental changes. It's not business as usual. What we're basically saying is that the plan that was approved, and, Gretchen and Andrew are on the hearing panel, and there were, I think, 0 submissions coming back disputing it. What the plan actually says is we've got teeth in relation to the regulatory, in terms of the notices of direction. What it also says in this operating plan is that we've now got 2 new targets in terms of setting up landowner-led rabbit control groups by the end of next year, both in Central Otago and one in Coastal Otago. What it also says in this operational plan in relation to rabbits is that the council needs to consider what is the preferred operating model for landowner-led rabbit control groups and its role in such groups. So all the areas around our towns, Cromwell, and et cetera, there's some work to be done. This is not about getting a report and putting it on the shelf and going, oh shit, it's same as. There's actually work for the community to do. There's work for the council to do. And if we don't do it, it's going to fall over. The same with wallabies in terms of, 2 years ago, huge frustration. We put money in our budget, something like 600,000. And since that time, we've got an MOU and, and there's different bits and pieces. Gavin tells me now that we're setting up a camera system on Avonmore Dam. That's something we've been talking about for quite a while in terms of the wallabies coming in. But the wallabies, nevertheless, is a huge issue. Councillor Malcolm, I think, said to me that there was a particular farm where a huge number of wallabies were shot recently. It's a problem that could potentially balloon out. We can't forget about it. We've got some work to do. And actually, my question to Gavin is actually, even though the portfolio group has worked a number of times, my question when I re-look at it is actually, does the wallaby KPIs, does that actually just need a little bit more teeth? There's no data there. It's all about we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But at the end of the day, if we're going to get down to eradication, don't we need to have some type of graphical curve to 0 that we can have some accountability around? So I'll ask that question, but to respond to Alexa's fundamental question, I think we need transparency around this, and we need to drive it. And I know Councillor Laws, I think, is going to speak next, or say, well, shit, is it necessarily going to work? Well, if it doesn't work, then we need to look at ourselves, because we have the fundamental question of fronting up to what is the right operating model for these landowner-led rabbit groups. And we have the regulatory teeth. So it's up to us. It's actually up to us to drive this. And so, for example, in our regulatory reports, I would like to see from here on in that how many of farms from our annual inspections are missing, male number 3, and what is their process? So there's some accountability, as opposed to going through a number of years when we ignored it because we didn't have the teeth to do anything about it. So,
okay. Thank you, Brian. Can I just go through the speaking list? I didn't.
I've got a question there for Dr. Palmer.
Oh, sorry. It's okay.
So the question is, when you go through the KPIs for wallabies, like if you go through the KPI for rabbits, we've actually got male 3. So there's some accountability about the density of rabbits that we think is reasonable. Whereas for wallabies, I don't think there's anything there. From a governance perspective, I couldn't tell you how many wallabies.
We've got the question, love.
Yeah.
Answer.
Through Madam Chair, yes, the difficulty with wallabies is that the exact numerical size of the population is not known, and so therefore you cannot set a quantified pathway to eradication. it's meaningless to put in there that you'll eliminate a certain number of the species per annum or whatever that pathway looks like. And so for that reason, we are silent on that. You've mentioned the work at Aviemore, and that's a key part of improving the measurement system. So when we get the artificial intelligence camera there, that will go some way to helping us understand the size of that population and the movements, but we will never get to the point where we have good information on the true size of the population, hence the inability to have a quantified measure there.
I've got 4 people on a list. I've got Hilary, followed by Andrew, followed by myself, Gretchen, then Kevin. Kevin, I've got you on.
And Michael Laws.
And Michael Laws, thank you. Hilary.
I'm new to most of this, but I just focus on something that I do know something about, namely the rabbits. And I've got a quick question. This may come from somewhere else. I've got other things too, but a quick question. When it says regulation, all occupiers are to control below 3. Thing number 1. Thing number 2, occupiers to control rabbits like number 1 within 500 metres of their boundaries if the neighbour's doing it too. If everyone has to control them to with under 3, then why do we also need to say good neighbour wise you have to control them to under 3 within 500 metres of your boundary? If you already had to control them all anyway, I don't see how those 2 bits fit together. Could somebody just tell me that?
Who'd like to answer? Richard?
I can answer that. Look, until the Good Neighbour Rule, which is new to the Biosecurity, the Biosecurity Act came in as the National Policy Direction 2015. The Crown were not bound by the Biosecurity Act, and the Good Neighbour Rule, which came in, now enables the Crown to be bound by the Act through the Good Neighbour Rule. So that's the reason why the Good Neighbour Rule is in the new plan.
But what I'm saying is if all occupiers are required to, then good neighbours are a subsection of all occupiers. So once you've said all occupiers have to, what does the number 2 add to number 1 when you already all have to?
If you go inside the boundary further than your 500 metres, obviously there can be major rabbit problems within there that certainly could be an exceedance of the MAL 3.
Yes, but the first one says all occupiers are required to control them at that level. It doesn't say anything about boundaries. So I'm just trying to understand what those 2 things.
Sarah's got a hand up. Sarah, do you want to come into this?
I would just say, Councillor Calvert, it's probably what I'd call a belts and braces approach. So, making sure that all bases are covered, and we have that assistance with the Good Neighbour Rule now to ensure that Crown land's included.
Okay, because the issue there is that the second one seems to suggest that within 500 metres of your boundary is the part you need to control. So rather than adding to number 1, it actually limits number 1 to suggest that so long as you're more than 500 metres from a boundary, it doesn't matter so much. I'm just, unless that's an obligation, I think those 2 lots of things, the second one makes it less clear than the first one. So it suggests that so long as I'm more than 500 metres from a boundary, where I obviously have to do it as a good neighbour, it doesn't matter so much.
Got a comment or not?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I just wonder if we come back to Councillor Calvert's question after the meeting. It's a bit of a subject matter expert question, and there might be some context around it which needs to be brought forward. If you agree?
Thank you. Yes, it wasn't necessarily for everyone, just to the other things about rabbits, when we can now, under this, I gather, issue a notice of direction. Are we intending to do those to people who have a group, landowner-led rabbit control group? Because we seem to be, the focus there seems to be on facilitating, establishing landowner, including docklands, and other people, would we, anybody who's part of those groups, do we still just put a notice of direction on as well if they're not controlling them? Anyone?
I can
Madam Chair, I wonder if Ms Howard could answer that question.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I think the question is, if we set up these groups but people are still not complying, would we issue a notice of direction? Obviously, that's a measure of last resort. However, if through the best intentions of everybody that still wasn't occurring, then that's definitely a tool that we could utilise. But the whole idea of setting up these groups is that we don't get to that end scale in terms of the management tools. Is that the question you were asking?
Well, where the question comes from is that there's a strong frustration with people about neighbours. You can't control your neighbours, your rabbits, because they're not your rabbits. They might belong to the neighbour insofar as they belong to anybody. And that frustration, of course, from farmers is particularly that Crown land and things that they don't control their rabbits and things. So that the feeling from people is it's hard enough to get a neighbour who's another farmer to control their rabbits, but you've got no chance of getting the government to. So we would need to be seen to be even-handed with everybody, and it might be good to actually get some notices of direction out there early on to just focus people's attention on the fact that this isn't just a sort of a few words on a piece of paper. It's actually, because if you have a look at the whole plan, what are we doing and why, it's by no means certain that the $800,000 we're spending will necessarily have any less rabbits, which is the object of the exercise. That there's sort of, and that feeds back into Brian's idea about what are we actually trying to, have we got numbers we're trying to achieve or something, so as we can compare what we're doing with what we're wanting to get to, rather than just sort of, we'd like fewer of them than perhaps before, when we don't even know how many there are.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. This whole process relies on a package of activities, some new, some not. So we need to identify and be able to articulate as much as possible the extent of the problem, implement a range of initiatives, making sure that they're fair and transparent and go across the expectations of our plan. And where they're not, we need to be able to respond to those. One of those outcomes is potentially issuing notices of direction and then monitor our progress. So we're looking to maximise the benefit of that investment that the community is putting into this problem. So I think we're in agreement with what you're saying, that the outcomes are important. As we all know, with environmental outcomes and pests, it's difficult to be able to, and with animal pests, maybe more so than plants, to be able to come up with a definitive answer to every problem, but that's our job.
So just one last thing, you'll be pleased. The last thing is, I presume that we can do more than what's here, that this is a bottom line which we might or might not think is too low to be a bottom line, but it doesn't stop us when they say, for instance, 130 rural property inspections and nothing under 10 hectares or whatever. It doesn't mean we can't do other things, especially if we need to know what we've got at the moment and how we're actually getting on, I presume. So this is intended to be a minimum adequate or not document, not a best practice or a good. Is that the situation?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, it is, and the test is consistency with the plan. So yes, as long as we're consistent with our plan, we can do more.
Thanks.
Thank you. Can I now go to Andrew, and then Marion, then Gretchen, then Kevin, then Michael? Andrew.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just want to go back to Alexa's original question. Why aren't we going harder at the feral rabbit problem? And just thinking back to the process we went through when we consulted on the pest management plan, one of the criteria which is part of I think it's the Biosecurity Act. You are required to do a business case or economic analysis or whatever to justify the level of control. So the sustained control for rabbits, obviously it's got to be realistic, doable, achievable, etc. So yeah, you could have a higher level of control, but the reality is, like I say, the analysis that was done and the control methods that have happened in the past, and the target of MEL 3, which essentially gives you the target, we've actually got the tools there to achieve sustained control. But to go to a higher level, it's just economically unrealistic and not achievable in the where we're currently at. So, and I just pick up on the point that Hillary's made. Yeah, I think we can certainly do more under the new plan, and as Richard Lord has alluded to, we've got additional tools in the toolbox. But also, I think we do really seriously need to ensure more out of control rabbit areas, or the landowners, whoever they are held to task, and compliance needs to be, or enforcement needs to be lifted in those areas. And I just want to share with you for one moment, I spent 4 or 5 days camping in the outlet camping ground at Wanaka early in the new year. And I literally walked over rabbits as I stumbled towards the kitchen first thing in the morning and last thing at night heading back to the tent. So in some areas, it's just unbelievable. And I saw it for myself. And these rabbits literally didn't care about humans. They would just go about their business regardless of anyone was walking around. And even my little Jack Russell, he didn't spook them either. So yeah, we've got problems in areas. We do need to lift our game and acknowledge that.
Thank you. From me, there is a question which goes like this. Under the 2.2 of your plan, you talk about all the methods and resources on how pest control will be carried out. I just want to know, how many staff have we actually got to do this work, given that there is a $500,000 increase in the biosecurity budget? Do you need more people? How many staff have you got on the ground to do this work? And answer.
I could answer that, please, Madam Chair. At the moment, we've got the equivalent of 6 FTEs on the ground at the moment for both animals and plants. Yes, if we had increased resources, we could do more. And I think through our discussions that we've been having for many months, and certainly what's being discussed today, we do need to raise the game on the rabbit side of things.
Through Madam Chair, you're correct. There's an extra $500,000 resource in there. This plan kicks off on the 1st of July, and we've provided for it in our draft annual plan. So yes, there is further resource required, but we've made allowance for that in the annual plan.
So can I just check between the two of you then? The 6 FTE is what is currently there, or is it what is, and will we be adding to that come July the 1st?
Through Madam Chair, in the next financial year, it'll be some combination of employees and contractors as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted. Gretchen.
Thank you. Having been part of formulating the plan, I think it's a really good one, but like any other plan, it's our will to make it work. That is the challenge. So this legislation is quite different from a lot of others that we deal with, in that as part of the planning, we actually did need to do the financial side of it and the budgeting at that point, and it's now essentially legal requirement to implement that budget. So that's different from the way you often do planning. So it's there and it's all been planned for. But, and so, yeah, as we've just heard from Richard, there's been some good planning to get people on the ground and to make this plan work. It's also practical in the fact that what Andrew talked about is that you must achieve what you set out to within 10 years. So sometimes at the time of writing the plan, you may not have all the information that you need to be able to go in as hard as perhaps you might want to. You have to be certain when you go into it and do all the cost benefit analysis, etc., and look at your info that you're actually going to achieve it in 10 years, different levels of control. So we've got all that there, but there's also monitoring going on, and definitely the possibility of partially reviewing parts of the plan if we find out more and we actually want to change the standard, I suppose, of control. We could do that, and that was envisaged. There's quite a lot of monitoring going on. Then there's the enforcement, and that's again a will thing. So we need to actually do that. Okay, in the past, we may not have done that well in some areas. We can acknowledge that, but we have to do well with this plan going forward. And I think that's acknowledged. And I really like that we've got an operational plan so early, and it's to be reviewed annually, I think, as well, isn't it? So fantastic. Really good. We need to be accountable. We need to be investing in enforcement. Couple of things I think did fall a little bit flat. There's 4.4 and 4.5 towards the end. One is empowering people, and the two things that were mentioned were supporting Enviro schools and investing in the Eco Fund. And I just thought that's not really harnessing what we heard a lot about from submitters. Was heaps and heaps of community groups are out there doing amazing work in this space. And is that harnessing, is it really playing a regional leadership role in empowering communities? Probably we could do better in describing how we're going to do that, I think. It's more than just Enviro schools and investing in the Eco Fund there, especially given we're investing in biodiversity scientists and coordinator potentially soon. So how could that all fit together to empower communities? The other one is landscape scale, and there's a note there about predator-free Dunedin.
There is.
Yep. So landscape scale projects are definitely the way of the future. Yep. And there was a lot of submissions there as well. And throughout the region of site-led type initiatives, which could be described as landscape scale. And that's another tool that the legislation provides for, so that during the lifespan of this plan, we can insert them without doing plan changes. So it's quite an important tool that can be used, and just reflecting how we do that. I think it's notes, sorry, I'm looking at my other screen, that we could give guidance to smaller site-led initiatives.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, the panel when discussing this really did want to point out that there's an opportunity right throughout the region to get communities on board and leading site-led approaches themselves. They could be on anything. They actually could be on rabbits. They actually could be on they're on possums, you know. So yeah, get their thinking heads together and there's, you know, work together and potentially insert that. So that was another one I wanted to point out. No questions, thanks.
Thank you, Gretchen. Kevin, Malcolm. Kevin.
Yep, got me.
Thanks, Steve.
Look, Marion, I've sort of been over this a few times now, this plan and the operational plan, and look, I think it's quite superb. And sure, we can look. The reality is, your plan can be a page long or it can be 20 pages long, but actually, unless we've got people that want to drive it, it's just not going to happen. And I think clearly by the way the plan's been put together, that staff are there to drive it, but we as governors now have to step in beside them and make sure it is driven. And we've got to continually ask the questions: what is happening? You know, what is happening with the rabbits? What is your monitoring showing up? Where are we getting to enforcing? Are we working with the groups correctly? And where possible, we've got to jump in with the staff and advocate for that to be happening. So at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper that I think has been very well compiled, but we just need to actually sit there and drive it. Wallaby answer is simple. That's eradication. So we've just simply got to get over this next 10-year period, is it? We've got to get rid of the blighters. So you can send me up the Hacker Valley whenever you like, Gavin, and show me where to go, and I'll bowl a few of them off. And the rabbit problem is that rabbits have got to be put under control. So we've got this now with MEL 3, and we've actually got to start either enforcing that, or we've certainly got to be heading towards it. So I really want to see some. It says that we're working with DOC and with LINZ. So let's see where they are coming up with plans to stop it on their properties. We had that Mr. Dixon, the rabbiter from Central Otago, came down, and that was one of his real concerns, that all the rabbits were coming from those sorts of land. So we need to start showing that we have got some teeth. We've given you some teeth. We don't necessarily want those teeth flashed, but we want to be working towards getting some action happening, because we've got $800,000 in there for rabbits. It actually doesn't show one rabbit being shot for that $800,000, but it is giving us a very good monitoring program with some very good teeth behind it. So let's support the staff and get this plan up and driven in the right direction. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I've got Michael Laws. Michael. Yep.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yes.
Great, thank you. Alexa is started all this conversation, and well done, Alexa, on this, in exhibiting a pretty common frustration from people who live in regional Otago around both rabbits and the role or not of the Otago Regional Council. So I just want to endorse that what Alexa has said is something that has been said for not just the last 12 months, but for years now. This pest management plan is, as Kevin points out, spending $800,000 on monitoring whether or not landowners are meeting the pest management strategy and the requirements placed upon them. But I note that on page 38, and it's worth noting because this is the problem, and I'll quote it direct, that there is no dedicated inspection work carried out on properties under 10 hectares. Now, that's the issue. And for rabbits don't respect fences, or whether you're a farmer, a lifestyle, or a council reserve. And the frustration that is up here is that it is not farmers, and it really isn't farmers or horticulturalists who have a major economic spur to control rabbits on their property, who are the problem. The problem, as Andrew alluded to by anecdote, are those who aren't actually farming, who do not have an economic interest in the land on a daily basis. And so we've got a plan that isn't actually targeting those people at all. So that was always the weakness of this pest management and biosecurity plan when it comes to feral rabbits. The thing that we've really got to do, I mean, at least we're going to be monitoring it, but when, and we keep on talking, but we never do anything. We've got to stop talking and start setting dates for when the monitoring reports come in, because that will be the true effectiveness of this. Now, I expect Andrew and Gretchen to defend the pest management plan, but I mean, I was one of those councillors in the last council who said this won't work. And I think there's pretty ample anecdotal proof at the moment that it certainly hasn't worked with feral rabbits. But what Andrew and Gretchen are saying is, yeah, we'll give the pest management plan time to work. Fine. So what we now need in 12 months' time from now is such an effective monitoring regime that we can actually test whether or not our pest management strategy is working full stop. So I'm expecting, and so all I'm just saying is it to Andrew, not Andrew who's responsible for this, it's for Sarah and for Gavin. I think, what are we going to do about the properties that are under 10 hectares? Because they have no incentive, if we're not monitoring them, to actually look at this pest management plan in any way. And two, Are we expecting a report in 12 months where we'll say, this is how many rabbits are here now, and this is how many rabbits are here 12 months ago? And therefore, there's the gauge of whether or not this pest management plan's working, because that's the way you would normally gauge success. Are there less? Sarah?
Well, not Sarah. Can I have Richard, please, or Kevin? Richard?
No, Madam Chair, maybe if I could start the answers. Starting with the second question around monitoring, one of the questions I've asked of staff is around the robustness of our pest monitoring generally. Is it scientific? Are we measuring the right things? And are we doing enough? So that's a piece of work that we will commence shortly in terms of whether that monitoring and reporting on plan effectiveness and state of species is adequate and fit for purpose. On the first question around the smaller properties, I think the key is on page 39, the piece around landowner-led rabbit control groups, which is something that the panel recommended and council adopted when it adopted the plan. And you'll see there that it talks about the preferred operating model. So as part of that, we'll be coming back to council with what role we play. Are we, for example, the facilitator of pest destruction through our buying power or our expertise? How do we go about monitoring the effectiveness of those programs at that smaller scale? And there are some similarities with the thinking that council is giving to water catchment groups. So, yeah, that's the thinking around those smaller properties at the moment.
Michael, do you want to comment?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess my response to that is, so right, we now know we've got a problem in those areas, but why don't we start doing something about it now would be my response to that. I don't want to have to wait 12 months to know that we are not actually doing something which we should be doing now, which is monitoring those very properties from which we are most likely to be having feral rabbits occupy and enjoy safe haven. And certainly, can I tell you, up here in Central Otago and the lakes, it's the properties that aren't farming and that aren't horticultural that are the prime problem, and many of them in actual fact are council reserves, where very little work's going on. So all I'm saying is there's a gap in our strategy. It exists now. There's a gap in our plan. There it is. It's sitting there on page 38. And I think that waiting 12 months to have that confirmed is not the sanest step.
Can I sort of widen that a little bit to say that on a number of issues in here, and when we talk about monitoring, we're talking about monitoring at 12 months. Some of them we may want to, if we want to actually push up energy or money or whatever into the plan, review the plan, it might be good at 6 months. But here's where I need some science, because I expect that rabbits go down. I've been advised rabbits go down in numbers when it's cold in winter. So, or not. So there are some species that they take off at certain times and they go down. So the reporting time, the monitoring time for them is pertinent and different, I would imagine. Can any of you help me out with that? We don't just wait for 12 months to monitor.
No, we'll know in spring and summer.
You'll know in spring and summer? Of this year,
absolutely. From our monitoring and from our night counts, and we should be able to measure that. Richard or Gavin will be able to confirm that. We should be able to measure that from our night counts of 12 months ago, shouldn't we? Or whenever we do the night counts, because they are conducted in, I think, about 130. Is it 130 guys? Separate areas.
That's it.
Sorry?
Kate, you said
that's
something.
The number. I said that's the number on page 39 is 130.
Yeah.
Richard wants to say something.
Hang on for a minute. Michael, Lord, go on, Michael.
So what I'm saying, Marianne, is that by Christmas, we should have a fairly fair, I mean, what's the breeding season of a rabbit? About 6 months for their breed, normally twice, 3 times in a cycle. So we'll certainly know. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right, Marianne. Rabbit activity desists or in actual fact reduces over winter. But I look out every day on rabbits that are running across my lawn. and they're still here, and we're heading into winter.
Thank you. Somebody called out something, and Brian, you did.
Richard wanted to offer a response.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. The monitoring is done at the same time every year, and that whether that be night counts. And you're quite right about rabbit populations going up and down. They're very dynamic, and they can drastically change within a very short period of time, whether that be a harsh winter, which we've not had enough of in many years, and also the virus going through can have quite a dramatic effect on just the populations out there at times too.
Okay, Sarah, you've got your hand up.
Sorry. Yeah. I guess I just I think I fully understand the conversation about monitoring, but I also think it's really important that we all get behind the plan now that it's in place, and you know, it's the best tool that we have to manage the issue. And I guess one of the things that's really important is that we're consistent in our messaging. So from time to time, we do tend to get a bit diverse in the way that we message, because often we talk about things like, you know, perhaps ORC playing a different role, as in being a killer of things, as opposed to what we are, which is a facilitator of landowners and others to do that work. So I guess the point I would make is, you know, it's really important now that we take the plan, we take the implementation program, but that we also all sing from the same song sheet. And fundamentally, the bottom line for this is that control of whatever pest it may be is the responsibility of the landowner. And so I think we need to continue to talk about it in that way, so that there's no, I guess, no clouding of the fact that ultimately pest management does lie with the landowner.
Can I respond? Because I have to say that I won't be singing from that song sheet, and I haven't since I was elected to this council 3.5 years ago, because it's proven to fail. And continuing with a failed policy is not an answer to the feral rabbit population, and everyone up here in Central understands that. It is not the individual economic landowner who's the problem. As I said right from the start, they have an economic incentive to control rabbits on their property. It's those very areas that we won't be monitoring in this pest plan that are the greatest progenitor of the rabbit population.
Did I see a hand up? I did.
You did.
Me.
I've got Robertson, and I've got Malcolm, and I've got Kate, and I've got Kevin.
Oh,
no, that's me.
Gretchen.
Me?
Gretchen, did you want to say something?
Just wanted to say that actually the facts around where the problem is, yes, there's certainly peri-urban problems. We also had federated farmers presenting to us that there's an inconsistency in the way that farmers themselves control rabbits, and actually did want us to focus on some particular land holdings, and that actually it's a widespread problem. It's a big problem, we know that. Other thing to say that's important is that we're not sitting back and just monitoring for 12 months, and actually the operational plan says that. So we are doing things over the next 12 months as well as monitoring. It's not just sit back and hope for the best and find out in time. We're investing in working with community groups. We are, as Gavin already just said, we are setting up models, and Brian spoke about it as well. Those are some examples of what we're doing to determine how best community groups can get together and can manage rabbits. We've got examples of that in Otago already. That's one thing we're doing. We're focusing only on rabbits now. We're doing a whole lot of other things in this space too. I don't know if Gavin wants to talk about that, but going away with the message that all we're going to do is monitor is not correct. There's enforcement too, actually.
Thank you, Gretchen. Kevin, followed by Andrew.
Look, just hopping along with these rabbits, there is this good neighbour rule that, to me, that says you've got to be within 500 metres of the boundary and have the same density. So therefore, 500 metres from any boundary of a 10 hectare block would in fact,
It's for Crown land only.
eh?
The problem that people are getting confused with is that the good neighbour rule is for Crown land.
Oh, right. So that's, sorry, just clarifying that with you through the chair with Councillor Robertson. Is that so? If I've got a 10 hectare block, I'm not compelled by the good neighbour
No.
rule. I'm just compelled by
Yep.
MEL 3. Good. Okay. Right. So that's still I'm. So what I probably to Gavin and to Richard really is, are we getting people from these economic units telling you that the 10 hectare block down the road is covered in rabbits and could you do something about it? Are those blocks being reported to you?
Michael?
Oh, I can answer that.
No, not
but,
Michael
um,
Lord.
No, I want
Michael
Richard.
Lord.
Richard. Yes.
Richard Lord. Sorry.
Yes, look, we do have a high number of our complaints actually do come from the peri-urban areas. That's a fact. We've had problems in some of these areas for some time. Control tools are very limited within those areas, and that's one of the difficulties we've had and will continue to have.
Thank you. Can I go to Andrew, followed by Kate?
Oh, look, only one word to say. It's enforcement. And I think if we lift our game in the enforcement space, and this tool was in the toolbox before the pest management plan was adopted, it's still there, will be there in the future. And I think that message about enforcement, I think will be taken seriously when more of it happens in the community. I think it's just a message that we need to ensure that the acceptable level at MEL 3 will be enforced, and we just need to, I suppose, step up in that space. So one word: enforcement.
Kate, thank you, Andrew. Kate.
Thank you. Look, I'm happy, and I take your point, Sarah, that this is what is written and we're going to accept it. I have to say that I'm frustrated by the messaging that monitoring is more important than something that actually is even going to be aspired to outside of the time frame of this plan, and that's the setting up of at least one central and one coastal new landowner-led rabbit control group by December 2021. That is unambitious, and that is going to be the most effective way of getting change. So leave that as a be. I'm going to deal with it a different way, and I foreshadow it wanting to do an additional motion at the end, that we do this, because that is what's here and it's too hard to change it. But we look at putting, and I've sent the motion around, basically that we look at what we can do over and above this to drive employment and environmental outcomes, and consider it at the annual plan, putting more money into this, but it will need some seed funding in the meantime. So I'll foreshadow that motion for later once this one's been dealt with.
Okay.
May I speak?
Who's speaking?
Please, Marion, through the chair.
Carmen, sorry, love. On you go.
No, it's all right. I completely echo what Councillor Wilson has said, and I wonder, is there any way, and I'm with her on this, that we need to change what we've got. We've got some great tools, and I acknowledge what Richard Lord has said. We've now got this, notice of motion that you can move. We've got much more teeth in it, and I appreciate that. I mean, and as Councillor Lord said, and the other thing is the topography has changed. We don't seem to acknowledge that either. Where there were houses once, or are houses now, there wasn't houses. And it's that person in the middle, isn't it? I feel the same thing, that is not being addressed to. And the thing is, the other thing I'd like to see, please, when we reply to Margaret Hall of Wanaka in the paper, we make sure we emphasise that we have now got teeth. That is really important, and I will be supporting Councillor Wilson's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to the motions? And did I have a mover or a seconder for 1, 2, 3, 4? Receive the report?
Yeah.
Who moved?
Oh,
God save us. I got Gretchen. Are you asking a question, Hilary?
I'm asking a question. The question I asked earlier about the confusion in the regulations that people said to talk about later and figure out. Can we have a motion that says with the modifications made to make those bits consistent?
I don't know. I think, I'm not too sure that people admitted there was an inconsistency. I think they wanted to have a conversation with you later offline because it was fairly detailed. Am I correct? That's how I read that. I didn't see an admission that it was inconsistent, and therefore I wouldn't like it to go on a motion.
No, well, it doesn't, perhaps inconsistency is not the right word, but it doesn't make the sort of sense you'd expect from two things, one after the other in the regulations. It's
Okay, I unless you got support, I really don't want to put that up as a motion.
okay, if our staff are happy about that, it's a surprise to me, but there we go.
They're going to have a conversation with you later, Hilary, about it.
And then it will be passed, Marion, in its form.
Can we empower staff to make necessary typographical corrections if needed?
No, Madam Chair, if I could speak, you're talking about something that's encapsulated in a regional plan that you've already, best management plan that's already been approved. And I think the issue here is just taking the time to explain the rule and to whom it applies. And I just wonder if staff prepare a note that we will send to all councillors after this meeting, just explaining it and describing how the two rules are compatible and why they are both needed.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's just in this one, it's been carried forward to this one, that's all. And it's not that they just are what they are.
It's an operational plan, Hilary. It's an operational plan acting on a plan that we've already passed. And that is one of the issues. You can't change an operational plan if you put it in contradiction to a plan you have already passed. Am I correct? Could not.
Can we just ask, can we add in that staff can make any typographical changes if necessary though? And that leaves that open? It's not substantive.
Because, Kate, that would be typographical changes to an operational plan that takes its lead from its original plan.
No, I think we're talking across each other, don't worry.
Can I ask that the four recommendations be put?
Right, thank you. Okay, receives the report, approves the management plan, agrees to provide sorry, I'm getting tired, a regional pest management plan to the minister, and notes that staff will report back to council. That was moved and it was seconded. It was moved. Who moved that?
Myself.
Are we taking them
Brian,
individually?
Scott and Gretchen. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against?
I'd
No.
like to abstain, thanks.
And Councillor Calvert will abstain. I declare.
And Councillor Laws says no.
Oh, thank you. And Councillor Laws says no.
Right.
So we must
Well,
have.
it's only
9
actually
in
to number
favour.
2.
Sorry. We just talked
It was
about-
actually only to number 2, Marion, but it doesn't. Yeah, I would have supported 1, 3, and 4, but I can't support 2.
Liz, is that clear? Have you got that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So that means that we would have had 9 in favour, 1 abstention by Hilary, and 1 disagreement to number 2 from Michael Laws. I therefore declare the motion carried. Now, Kate, you have a motion that you want to put up.
And I've sent it through to everyone, and I'm sorry, it is hastily put together, and apologies if it doesn't make sense. But that council asks staff to consider optimising employment and environmental opportunities through an enhanced operational plan for 2021 and report back in time for the annual plan deliberations about how that might be funded and organised. That this work being funded by an up to $150,000 overspend to provide a target-based consultants to assess the opportunities. Now, there's 2 parts to this. One is that we need to get a work stream if we are going to look at employment opportunities with the highest environmental outcomes that provides consistent work all year round. I would like to see emphasis on rabbits, on what's your weed in the lakes called Lagosiphon?
Lagosiphon.
And wild conifers. But I also want to leave it as broad enough that it can be scoped to enhance as many parts of the environment with maximising job and employment numbers. So I think that will it's not inconsistent with the motions already put, but it just lets us have an idea of how we could maximise the benefits over the next few years.
Kate, can I just ask a question, dear? I didn't understand something. Which annual plan? The one that we've got out for consultation now, or next year's, beginning in July 21?
This year's. Yep, that we try and optimise this year. This is when we're going to need it in the 2021 year.
Have you got a seconder?
Yeah, I'd happily second that.
Hope. Thank you, Carmen. Any comments? Kevin, not Kevin, Andrew, Gretchen, Brian.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, my only comment would be, look, we're in a completely different world now than when we adopted the annual plan back in, the draft annual plan, proposed annual plan, whatever, 6 weeks ago, or whenever it was. So I'm supportive of this because it has that employment opportunity aspect, and clearly it's targeted in an area where we have a considerable problem, and increasing resources in that space seems to make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Gretchen.
No, I didn't need to talk.
Sorry. Alexa?
Yeah. Apologies. I was just trying to look at the motion. I'm always uncomfortable with policy on the fly. Never happy with that. And I think that I totally agree with your sentiments, Kate, but I don't think this is the place for them. I think that should be coming into the package that we've already asked staff to put together around economic and environmental recovery happening together. And so I won't support it on that basis.
Thank you, Alexa. Brian, then Sarah.
Yeah, just so I understand it. So, Kate, you're saying that maybe there's opportunities for people in the community to pull out weeds, to shoot rabbits, or to pay contractors to pull out leg siphon. And the 150,000, so was that up to a total of 150,000, or was that for the consultants to assess it?
That's, look, I don't know. And I've sent around an email that gave some indication of what it would take to do a Tiger-wide approach on one of those pests. I don't know if that's the correct numbers, but I think we need to it's unfair to put work in the budget without having a line item with it. So that's why I've done that. If that's not what's normally done, I'm happy to take that out.
No, that's fair enough. But was that there for, the additional sum of that work, pulling out weeds, shooting rabbits, was up to a total of 150? That wasn't for the investigation.
It is for the investigation. It's so that we know what we can do the best. And I don't expect that we've got the capacity to do that in-house at the moment, given the everything else that's happening at council. So it was about getting contractors, Otago-based contractors, to do that, consultants to do that work. And I said, a bit like doing the environmental fund increase, is what we're doing is seeing if we can get some bangs for our bucks quickly on it.
Okay, and I have got a question, and it's to staff. Can you see opportunities there?
Sarah, can you comment and answer and have your say as well?
Sure. As you will know, there are obviously options for us at the moment that we need to explore. I have to say I'm actually quite confused now about exactly what the motion's asking us to do. I would initially say I supported Councillor Forbes in terms of making policy on the fly is always a bit tricky. I think we could look at options as part of the broader work we will do around recovery that would inform perhaps the annual plan. I thought that what I had understood was that the 150 was the additional money to go into the annual plan for perhaps some further activity under the pest plan. If that's the case, I wouldn't suggest that you ring fence it in that way. I think it's really important to look at what are the benefits of what you can do. There might be options of scale. There might be options around timing and scaling up and scaling down. So I'm not sure that setting an amount at the moment is a good idea. However, then I heard Councillor Wilson say the 150 might have been to pay somebody to do the work to inform the annual plan. If that's the case, yes, it's unbudgeted, so that needs to be recognised because we would need to get that money from somewhere. Again, not sure that 150 is the amount. And so I just wonder if requesting the report would be a happy medium in the sense that request the report, we can come back to you with some advice about what it will cost and what the unbudgeted spend would be, if that's the intent.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, can I ask if Kate's prepared to modify her motion to simply ask for a report on the opportunity?
Yes, you can, and you have. Kate, have you got an answer?
Well, yeah, look, I had past Gavin and appreciate it was a lunchtime call, and when we had limited time to discuss it, I've gone down. But and I was advised that I thought it was consistent with his advice, so I'm sorry if it's the wrong thing to do. If we get a report back, what is the report back going to say that is going to get us a step closer for making really good decisions and making some really big change in the annual plan time? And that's the problem. I thought I was listening this morning when people want to make an environmental benefit out of what is happening and maximise the opportunities that we've got for jobs. And I don't see delaying that for a report that, yeah, maybe I've spent more time thinking about this stuff than others perhaps, but I see the real need to get some of the stuff sorted out and analysed, and I don't think it's something we can do in-house given our resources at the moment. So, yeah.
Okay, I want to respond to that. I think that I've been on a hell of a lot of calls in the last wee while amongst mayors and other people and up and down the country addressing this question. So I really don't take kindly to saying that maybe you've done more thinking about this than others. What I'm really scared about—
and some others, I said.
Thank you. What I'm really scared about is doing things on the fly. I thought I heard this morning quite some clarity about the council staff asked us for our views about what we should be doing in terms of economic recovery. And I think we came through really clearly that we wanted work to do in the exact things that we're talking about in biosecurity and biodiversity. But I didn't, what I don't want is a motion passed now, which sort of gives the council staff no room. It goes out to a group of people I don't even know, or maybe I do, and ignores the council staff who are already being asked to do this both by central government, by TAs and by us. And that's why I find it a contradiction.
Well, I'm happy to withdraw the motion on that basis. I'm sorry, I'm passing on something that I had a conversation with staff with at lunchtime, and I'm sorry that that's where I thought we were going to go. So I apologise for that. Happy to withdraw it.
Would the staff who had the conversation please explain?
Madam Chair, if I could speak. Look, I think the intent here is around asking staff as part of the wider recovery considerations to think about biosecurity. The methods we choose in terms of whether we use consultants, how much it costs is really an operational matter for staff to decide. My other comment is around the reference to an enhanced operational plan. To me, makes me think about the document you have just signed off on, and it makes it look like we are revisiting it as opposed to thinking about how to deliver it through increased activity. So maybe a simplification of the motion around its intent, which is basically to include biosecurity thinking in the wider corporate planning, would be the best way to handle it.
Or recovery.
Recovery planning, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Kate, would you like that?
Yep.
Would somebody like to move? I can't hear Kate,
Yeah.
sorry.
I said, I'm sorry. I said I will withdraw it. I'm sorry, it's no point.
I'm happy to move Dr. Palmer's motion.
Okay. Liz, did you get Dr. Palmer's motion?
Well,
Liz?
Madam Chair, could I just talk from up here in Oamaru?
Yes, you can.
Hey, look, I really hear the sentiments that Councillor Wilson was trying to put through, but I really do think we've encapsulated that in what we discussed this morning, and I think this will actually fall out of part of our recovery plan anyway. I think we'll start in the next round of talks that what is required. What Kate is trying to lead to is going to fall out of our next discussion on the recovery plan anyway. And because we know we've just okayed this plan, bang, it's underway. We know we know from everyone's talk where the grunts needed behind it, and I think that's going to come out of this recovery plan. And if it doesn't, well, we'll bang a motion in then and make sure it jolly well does. So I don't see that she. Councillor Wilson has offered to withdraw the motion, and I think that would be the best way to proceed.
Does anyone want to put a motion? That being so, let's move on, please. I think we've finished. Thank you, Kate. We've finished 8.4. We are now on the agenda on to RPS review, updated program. And the motion here is to set out options for a revised regional, what's it called? Regional policy review.
Madam Chair, do we need a cup of tea?
We're nearly there, Brian.
I think if we keep going, Brian, we just might make it through.
Have you got some ginger slice?
Nice.
And you're not getting any.
I've been drinking water steadily. So, would somebody who would like to lead out this discussion? As I understand it, there are 3 plans. One is status quo, if I got it right. The second one is using a, oh God, say this, I've now forgotten its name, but it was a special group of people doing paper by paper. And the third one was to do some late consultation. But would somebody like to outline them first? And Gwyneth, you've got a ring around you. It looks as though you're about to outline it for us. Or is it?
I'm happy to, but I was going to pass to Lisa. Do you want to outline the 3 options for us?
Go for it. Lisa.
Yes, happy to, through Madam Chair. The first option for the RPS review program is to status quo, so it's reflecting the program which was taken to Council's Policy and Strategy Committee in January, and that's basically for staff to get on with writing the RPS now, aiming to notify in November, so no further opportunity for any kind of engagement, community or stakeholder. Apart from where we might need to just get over a few roadblocks as we go through the process. Option B is the option to set up some reference groups. Attached to this report as well is a draft expressions of interest process and methodology that we'd propose to utilise in setting up reference groups if that's the option Council wants us to undertake. The purpose of these reference groups would be based on topic or chapters that the new RPS structure will have. So we'd be seeking people from community and stakeholders who've got relevant experience or interest or expertise to help us in that process. They're designed to be responding to what we're calling policy direction papers. So it will be assisting staff at a point where we are getting to actually drafting the policies. So it will help us, I guess, in terms of finalising a draft RPS to then bring back to Council. We're proposing to do those reference groups into 2 tranches, so splitting the topics of the RPS up into 2 groups, but obviously with an individual group for each of those topics. Again, RPS would still be aiming to be notified in November. And then the third option, option C, is to staff to progress drafting the RPS as we are at the moment, and then probably about halfway through that process towards the middle of the year, also prepare a summary document that we would then release to community and stakeholders, any interested person, for their comments. The purpose of that RPS summary document would be to seek guidance at a higher level in terms of it would set out the key directions of our RPS, where it might be different from what people have been used to in our partially operative RPS at the moment, to help staff finalise the the documentation to then bring it again through to council to hopefully notify by November this year. So status quo, targeting some reference groups in option B to seek detailed guidance and commentary, or then opening it up under option C to a more broader community consultation process.
Okay, people, thank you very much, Lisa. This is going to be actually quite hard, I think, to manage in terms of voting. I don't want to sort of vote 1, 2, 3, A, B or C. But just thinking about that, let's go through and say, let's get a feel for which ones people actually like, or if they have any questions about them.
Madam Chair, may I go?
Yeah, who's that? Councillor, yeah.
That's Carmen. Thank you. I'm a big fan of option B. I like it. I like how we have community interest. I like that, as lovely Lisa just said, there's details and guidance. And I think that's probably what we've been trying to align to. So that's my support on that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Carmen, for clarity. I see your hands up, Brian.
Yeah. My question is to staff. Thank you. Because look, my personal view is we're going to end up spending money, whether it's before the legal process or after. You know, this is what happened with our previous RPS. This RPS, it seems to me, is a little bit unique because we do have a foundation of the previous RPS in those processes. So we're sort of building upon it. And while I agree with Carmen in relation to option B, because it enables us to get our teeth into it, I'm also thinking that option C actually at least is a final step, and we can tweak things prior to, you know, falling out or the legal process with lawyers after notification. I mean, what is staff recommendation on this, or have I missed that in the report? I mean, if it was me, I'd probably do B and C, but it will cost too much in time possibly. But seriously, what is staff recommendation for this? Sarah.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We haven't put a recommendation with the report, and there's a number of reasons why. Firstly, for both option B and C, we have pointed out to you some risks, and one of those risks is not achieving the timeframe set for us by the Minister. And so we are bound by the commitments that we have made, and therefore we have some concern about the ability to meet those timeframes. And it wouldn't be prudent of us to recommend to you that you do anything other than meet those timeframes. So that's why you don't have a recommendation from us in regards to those options. I think if I can just finish, I think the other thing is you're not required to do further consultation by statute. You're only required to do the statutory parties, which is the exact same process that we followed for the Omnibus Plan. We are very aware that following that kind of process caused us some problems for the decision making around the Omnibus Plan content. But I think it's also really important to note that if you were to go down the track of option B or C or a hybrid, or whatever the case may be, then we need to iron out exactly what that needs to look like, so that there is an understanding between staff and council of what that will achieve, or what you are looking for, so that we don't end up spending additional time and money and still potentially end up with an issue at the point at which we bring the plan for the policy statement for notification. So just ask you to bear that in mind when you're thinking about decision making. But also we do have some concern about timing and whether or not we can meet the Minister's requirements for notification in November.
But if I can, Madam Chair, if you forget about timing and cost just for a minute, which is your recommendation between C and B?
I'm not going to give you a recommendation, quite simply because we're in a legal process and the boundaries within that process are that the minister has and you have agreed to a notification time frame. So therefore I don't consider I can recommend anything other than option A, because that is the least risky in terms of meeting statutory requirements all the way around.
But if you throw enough money at it, you would probably meet the time frame and be able to do one of B or C. I mean, for example, if you threw enough money at it, you could do it in a shorter time frame.
Okay, I have on here Andrew, Hillary, and Michael.
Madam Chair, am I not going to get an answer to that question?
Oh, sorry.
No, my answer is possibly. However, it's very difficult to know and to second guess what issues will be thrown up as a part of the further work that gets done, and what work needs to be done in order to play those issues out to a point. That's why we make the point that this isn't about either process. B or C is not about coming out with absolute agreement on anything, because we simply will not be able to achieve that. It would be highly unlikely in any process like this.
Thank you.
Okay. Andrew, Hillary, Michael, then Marion. Andrew.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This does reflect, well, there's a lot of synergies with what we discussed on April the 9th when I looked at this report. But if, in general terms, I support what Carmen has said in terms of option B. And my reasons are, if I start with the timeline, and I don't expect the Chief Executive to speak for governance, and my view with the timeline is that, yes, sure, we agree to it. It's a timeline. We've had COVID-19 that has destroyed our ability to achieve that timeline. Who knows what else is going to pop up between now and 25, 26, when we're supposed to have a land and water plan operative. So the timeline, in my view, from a governance, very much from a governance point of view, is a guide. We'll do our very best to meet that expectation of the minister that we've signed up to, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think meaningful consultation that gives a greater in-depth thought, discussion into the development of the or the review of the RPS, the opportunity with the reference group option and option B will act as a barometer in terms of how the plan is being developed. There are complex issues that need in-depth discussion, and the reference group has that ability to pull in experts in their field. For example, if I can just reflect on the previous process where seemed to be an unintended consequence when Port Otago were unable to maintain their navigational lights in the harbour, for example, and that was an outstanding issue that either wasn't resolved until recently. I'm not sure whether it was resolved or not, but it certainly was an example of unintended consequences where possibly if you had an additional layer of, i.e. reference group, you may have been able to avoid that as an example. So I think that we need to be more thorough in this RPS process, and also obviously going forward into the land and water plan process as well. And also I just want to mention one last thing. When Stephen Daish and Philip Moore performed that or conducted an external review of our consenting process, and I know that was focused on the replacement water permits, and I know it was in the last term. However, they made some comments about, I think the word they used was troubled. They were troubled that we seem to put a great amount of emphasis on the mandatory parties. And I sort of feel after the last couple of planning debates is that we still seem to be in that mindset. But I just want to share that with you. I may have it wrong, but I just feel that we need to move away from that concept. We need to step back and realise that the time frame is not the be all and end all, and we need to be thorough. And the reference group option seems to be a good option to be able to maybe not resolve all matters, but certainly understand what the outstanding matters are. That's probably a better way to look at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Hilary?
I would support a version of what Kate has sent round, which is a version of option B, I guess. Part of the reason for that is because I found what happened with the omnibus and other plan a bit unhelpful, particularly to staff. And I think that partially the staff were a bit ambushed because they had presented us with a plan and we had effectively, at least some of us said, that's not what we were thinking about at all. We would like other people listened to in a different way. And I would rather give the staff a better understanding of what we might like or what the people out there have issues with and things, which these groups, reference groups, would provide, because that way we don't end up with an ambush of our staff who get told there's things that are different. If they've got reference groups who are truly got some representative qualities about them, they're likely to canvass things to help the staff understand different views. If we only have our staff focusing on the mandatory stakeholders, then they can get a different view. And it's this, to me, if we choose option B, is our way of saying, if we have these reference groups and they're properly constituted and formed and one or two of us are sitting in, or whatever Sarah's words for those were, then we're all on the same page as it gets developed and we don't suddenly have that disconnect. So a version of option B to me would be a great idea.
Thank you. Michael Deaker.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. We've known for a very long time what the pressure on our planning staff was going to be over the last 15 months and for the next 2 years. I'm clearly remembering the briefings that we received as a new council back at the end of 2019, where that pressure, the number of tasks and the sheer scale of those tasks was spelt out to us, or at least those of us could be bothered to be there at those briefings. And we've had plenty of reminders this year of what has to be done and the sequence at which it has to be done. And it seems that every time we come across any of these planning procedures, we tend to try to slow it down. I'm absolutely bewildered by that. I'm a big supporter of option A. If we've listened at all to what Lisa Hawkins said to us earlier on, and reading between the lines that Sarah gave us, and that wasn't difficult to do, then option A is the way to go. And the consultations, the difficulties can be sorted out in the statutory process once the RPS drafting has been completed, meeting the minister's deadline. And I'm all in favour of meeting that deadline. I'm going to support option A and no other. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's me to have a turn, followed by Gretchen and then Kevin. I began, when I read this last night, at B, and I was sort of puzzled because in the risk analysis, staff had said, one of the risks is that council fails to adopt the draft or delays notification substantially in favour of late pre-notification consultation. And I'd have to say, why I've switched to A is I've listened to the arguments and I can see that about to happen. I can see all the same things again, which is I don't want to take any notice of the time. I don't want to honour my commitments that we've made. I want to consult, but I want to choose who are the consultants. And you see, why I like B at the beginning is that when I had a look at them, there wasn't one person that we probably locally knew. It said urban form and development. And then it said natural character. And I thought, oh God, there's that wonderful artist up in Central Otago. I was thinking of people like that, okay? I wasn't thinking of people that you all knew and that you wanted to put on who are consultants. I was thinking of right out there. So if we're going to get a hazard scientist, I was looking to the university. If I was looking for ecologist and rural land use, I was hoping to God that we had something who would talk to us about insects, because we always ignore insects. And that's the level that I was looking at. Listening to you, it's the same old, same old. It's, you know, it's the same old group of local consultants that we know that we want to put on. And if that's so, I really, and when I read Kate's thing, she says that council expresses a preference for Otago-based facilitators. Is that saying that somebody who's been brought up in Otago but who's now working at Victoria University doesn't really know? To be involved in option B, that councillors with appropriate roles be used as sponsors. I just find, so that's actually driven me, I'd have to tell you, straight out to A, not consultation. I wasn't looking for this as consultation. I was looking at it as a group of professionals giving us advice. And I've just heard the people who are really going for B sort of saying, it's our mates, it's the people we know, it's that sort of thing. So I'm—
Listen more carefully, Marion.
I've switched my vote to A. Gretchen.
Okay, yeah, this is one you really need to weigh up, and in doing so, I think of natural justice and everybody who should have a say in this being able to have a say. And having sat through the whole process of developing a regional policy statement recently, it's quite an eye-opening process as to who wants to be involved and have a say, and the amount of weight and resources they will put into having their say. So you will get every industry sector across Otago. You will get the lawyer for the Piggery Association, you will get the lawyer for Fonterra, Dairy NZ, you'll get every sector, Horticulture New Zealand, fruit, different types of fruit. Then you'll get the logistics trucking companies, you'll get every mining sector, you'll get every utilities, every petrol company will come along and argue they're a regionally significant industry. Then you'll get environmentalists at every level across New Zealand as well. It's vast who wants to be involved, and it's not necessarily the people that we run into day to day, and all of them have a right to have a say. And some of those people will be the people that we see later on taking it right through because it sets law that's important for all of New Zealand. So we need to think, how do we involve all of these people fairly? And yes, while B sounds good, it's quite difficult to achieve that. So I think either C, which is a more targeted approach to consultation, and it's wider consultation, you would have to make it very wide, or A, which is keeping it more simple and actually more fair to people. We've been through a long process of RPS, which has drawn out issues from all of those sectors, some of which I've mentioned, relatively recently. And while the world's changed, we have learned a lot, and we've done a lot of science and research and input into that, which we can use. Let's put out our thoughts, collating all of that, put it out to people, give them a fair chance to have a say. I think that's the best way. Otherwise, we're judging who gets a say, and we're also there, so not giving them leadership in terms of what we're thinking so that they can effectively respond. So I think that's the best approach, actually.
Thanks, Gretchen. Kevin, and then Kate.
Firstly, just a question to staff. In the consultation process that we did have, although it was abbreviated, were there any variances that came from any variations from the 2019 statement?
Through you, Madam Chair, I might try to answer that. Although I can't answer it particularly well, Councillor Malcolm, it's a really complex question because the RPS is so wide-ranging.
Yep.
So people weren't actually commenting specifically on the provisions, and because they're not rules, because the TAs and us implement them as rules later on down the track, it's hard for people to understand. Some of the messaging we did hear, predominantly at Oamaru actually, so you would have heard it as well, was the dairy sector wanted more clarity and regulation around effluent storage. People wanted flexibility around water use, and there was quite a few conversations around transport and carbon.
Is that okay, Kevin?
Yeah, good. So as my understanding of it is, at 2019 we had a pretty good document, but it actually wasn't formatted or shaped to satisfy Dr. Skelton, but really because it didn't incorporate the national policy statements correctly. Is that?
So through you, Madam Chair, there's a few things. So the 2019 partially operative version is the decisions version of the 2015 as notified. It's moved a long way from when it was notified. There are still some outstanding appeals to it. It has weaknesses, and in addition to that, it doesn't align with the national planning standards that you just referred to, and it doesn't give effect to national policy statements. So there's three aspects of it that we're looking, that we are improving on.
So again, through you, Madam Chair, to staff, are you currently at the stage as per the initial consultation or the initial program, April to July, preparing the draft at the moment?
We haven't started actually drafting yet.
Right.
Okay, and is it the intention to, because also part of that was to come back and report to the Stratton Finance Committee what you'd found out from consultation, wasn't it? So I presume you're not going to do that because you haven't had enough consultation?
Through the chair, I can answer that one. We are at the moment preparing a consultation summary document, which summarises both phases of consultation that we did get done. So all of the online consultation and then the information, excuse me, that we got out of the meetings that we were able to hold. And we are intending to bring that back to council, probably the next meeting on the May 27th meeting, so that council has an updated report as to everything that was said during those consultations.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, Kevin.
Yeah, so that probably just, we have a time pressure, Madam Chair, of November. Look, to me, we're missing the key part of this, and I understand why A is very attractive, and especially after being 2019 being such so close to what we're trying to do now. But without upsetting, can we buy some time on this to get some more consultation done in the initial way that we tried to do the consultation? Is that possible? Is that a phone call to the minister saying, we have had a bit of a hiccup, we don't want to, this is our most important document because all other documents stem from it. So I agree with A, in that it says we meet our statutory obligation, but it just doesn't. The key part that I thought we were, and Oamaru showed to me that it was absolutely that the community were involved, that we're missing that part. So can we get an extension from November? I don't, but stick to the original program, because we agreed to the original program.
Can I answer? I'll have a
Yep.
go, Malcolm, and it goes like this. Kevin,
Thank you.
sorry. I'm not, I took very seriously when we had those initial meetings that Michael Decker referred to before. I saw the structure of what we were doing. I mean, I stood for council because I was always worried about Otago's water, and any of those who share the platform with me will know that I raised that issue. And so when I saw at the beginning of the year in those initial meetings, the structure in which we had, so that you have a policy statement, so you can therefore begin your land and water, and you've got a deadline to do that. And it's not a deadline to me necessarily imposed by the minister. It's a deadline that I think we owe to Otago. Otherwise, we'll face another NIWA report talking again about our water issues. And that's what's driving me. And I could try a phone call to the minister. Well, I couldn't actually, to be perfectly honest. I have hope of getting a phone call into any minister, particularly in the six who are doing all the decision making at the moment. They just
I think Sarah can talk to them.
No, Sarah doesn't talk to the ministers, and I find that, Hillary,
Sorry,
inappropriate.
My apologies. I understood, and this is a very definite apology, Sarah. I understood that the report, and I might have been reading the wrong page, that came from Sarah at the beginning of the meeting, said that she'd been talking to the minister. Sorry, did I completely?
No, she hasn't.
My complete wholehearted apologies, Sarah.
Thank you. So there's just no way at the moment. Sorry, I just want to finish it to Kevin. You can make a decision as a council to go longer, but know, regardless of minister, know that that's going to affect your land and water plan. It's going to affect the next lot of plans. And we're always going to be Otago Regional Council at the bottom of the heap, not doing what other councils do all around this country as regards water. If you want to be there, be there. But can I beg of you, no. That was the answer, Kevin. Sorry, Kate had a hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Kate?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I think I apologise if anyone's taken anything from my comments in my draft agenda, draft motion, incorrectly. I have today twice talked about employing people in Otago, and that is because I think there is a real need to get jobs back in Otago, and our procurement needs to be more focused on that now, given COVID. So that is that light, and I said it in my previous motion, and that's why I've incorporated it. No other reason. It is about our reaction to buying local now more than ever. There is nothing untoward in it. The other one is I read from the report, and I'm sorry if I got it wrong, that there was a risk that it would be out of time, but that wouldn't necessarily be out of time. And I think that if we kept to the timeframes but said we're going to do B, by God, the forum group, if they put their names forward, their first, I think one of the first criteria is that they had to have the time to do it in that time frame. And you're not going to get people who are going to apply that don't. I also think that you're going to get I don't share the same concerns that Gretchen talked about a whole lot of people coming and putting their names forward, because I actually think people will think who is the best, most valuable person to stand for those interest groups and minimise the number of people that would put their names forward. I am hoping that we will get a lot of university staff putting their names forward. I think the opportunity of incorporating some people out in the field from some of the Guardians of Wanaka group and things like that, and then putting their names forward would be absolutely brilliant, that we will get a much more diverse point of view down the process for B, and that's why I'm going to still support it. I am not cynical enough to think that only people I know will stand. I have absolutely no idea who will stand. I think there are a number of people in the country who will lend support and or challenge staff in a good critical way to make sure that the plan, when it does come out, actually doesn't end up where this current one has. And that's the step that we need to do, is take the people with us. So that's why I think it's critical that we do something different and go down that path.
Thanks, Kate. Brian?
Just clarification, if I can, please, under option B and C, where it says under benefits, minimal change to original work program timelines. And it obviously says the minister's expectations may not be met. So is it as Kate is suggesting, you know, like we're going to, even with option B, it'll be roughly November, depending on how it sort of goes. Could be before, could be after, depending on, is that, when you say original timeline, what does that mean? Does that mean the timeline to November?
Yes, it means the timeline.
Okay, so really, so, you know, option B is the real option. It's not really even necessary. Okay, if it goes wrong, it's going to impact on the minister, but it's not going to be far off. I mean, let's just put it in context. There seems to be a lot of emotional talk here. I don't support Kate's motion, trying to tweak it, trying to tell staff what to do with finance and who's going to do it. But I think option B may be an appropriate compromise.
Can I ask people a question? How are we going to agree, or who is going to, I mean, you know, say a whole lot of people apply to these panels, how are we going to agree on who goes on them?
Staff will do it.
Staff, Lisa, and then Sarah.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have drafted and we attached to the report a call of expressions of interest and methodology. And in that, what we propose to do is to call for people to express their interest and to set out how they meet the criteria that we identify for each of the groups. And then for there to be a panel which would involve a couple of councillors as well as a couple of staff to go through those interests that we get in, and then to select to the groups that way. So it'd be a combination of both councillor and staff involvement to select the people for the reference groups.
Thank you. Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
Look, it's a very real concern of mine. I have to be upfront about that. One of the reasons is because of the issues that we have had so far. Almost every time staff have made decisions about who to include or what questions to ask or whatever throughout these recent planning processes, we have had issues that have arisen as a consequence when we've come to the council table. So I suppose it is a real concern of mine, because I just worry that we would do this and then we would get to the end, and again we would have some challenge about, well, hang on, we didn't have so and so involved and now we probably need to go and talk to them, or well, you didn't talk about the right things. So I'm just being upfront and honest with you. It's fine to challenge and to discuss and everything else, but how do we make sure that as staff we meet your expectations up front, rather than try and have to retrofit something at the back end if you're unhappy with whatever happens? So I guess that's my question to you, because we need to fully understand what you understand of option B or option C, if that's what you want to go with.
Any comments or questions?
I'm glad.
Yeah, can I make a
comment?
Hilary, please.
Go, Michael.
Oh, sorry, Hilary. Sorry, I was just looking at a message.
Sorry, is that Michael Lord or Michael Deaker?
No, Michael Deaker was going to say something, I think.
No, I was just congratulating Sarah on what she said. That's all I wanted to say.
Hilary, thank you, Michael.
I'm presuming, Sarah, that what has been developed by your staff in the way of a reference group and how to do it, and it seemed a good, comprehensive and very robust sort of structure. Are you now saying that you're not comfortable with that, because it has been presented to us as how we would do it?
Through the chair, no, I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that our experience to date is, for example, you wanted us to do some further consultation. I think it was on the water permits plan change. We put together a focus group. We had a conversation with that focus group. When we came back to council to talk to you about that, some of you said, oh, well, it didn't have this person, it didn't have that person, or it didn't have who I expected. And so, you know, I'm not really putting much weight on that. So what I'm saying is, how do I ensure that if we spend $180,000 and put the staff to this additional work, that it meets your expectations? Because otherwise, you know, we could end up having sort of omnibus round 2 prior to notification. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying I need some help and accountability from you around your expectations so that we can deliver and not fall into the trap we seem to be falling into each time, which is that for whatever reason, at the end of the process, the expectations haven't been met. That's what I'm saying.
Are you confident with your proposal, Sarah? As good as you, no certainty with anything, and whether we are crap about in response to you, are you happy with your proposal to us?
I'm confident in the proposal to you, Councillor Calvert. I'm just not confident that at the end of the day, it will satisfy all of you when it comes to making a decision after we've completed the work.
That's what you put in under risks, if I remember rightly. Risks for all of them, virtually. Council fails to adopt the draft or delays notification substantially in favour of late pre-notification consultation. And I have to say that's been my experience in the 6 months I've been on here.
This is a much better process. This seems to me to have been offered by staff with the knowledge of the problems that some people had with previous ones, and this answers most of the concerns that staff had, that councillors had on previous occasions. So it seems to me a really good way to go forward as a response to, I mean, it's always hopeful, better to travel hopefully, but.
Okay, now we come to the stage of how we manage this in terms of voting. Okay, because I think it's fair enough. I think we've explored quite a lot. We may change our minds. The first one was receiving the report, but it's when we come to approves one of the program options, A, B, or C. Do you want me to say how many want A, how many want B, how many want C? Or do, and if the lowest number was for C, then we went A and B. Do you see what I mean? I'm trying to do?
Yeah.
Would that be a fair way of going about that?
Good idea.
Okay, all right. Did anyone move these motions? Receives the report?
No, not yet.
Take that one.
I'm happy to move it for you.
Seconded.
Carmen, and can I have a seconder?
Michael Deaker.
Thank you, Michael Deaker. Sorry, I just noticed, Alexia, you've got your hand up.
Don't worry, I can wait for the next round.
Okay, all right. So we've moved and seconded that we receive this report. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against?
Aye.
Was that aye or an aye or a no? Put out that last one. Can I go through that again? All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Is there anybody saying no or, you know, sitting, whatever the other one is?
Abstaining.
Abstaining, yeah. There isn't. I declare the motion carried. 2, somebody like to move that we note the risks of each option. Okay?
Aye.
Alexa, seconded.
Happy to do it.
Who said that? Was that you, Carmen?
Yes, I was, but I think Councillor Deaker beat me to it.
Okay, look, I'll say Alexa and Carmen. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? Carried. That we approve one of the program options. This time I'm going to go round, dear Liz, name by name, and ask people to give me their preferred option. So
But it's not a vote, is it?
It's not a vote. It will knock out one. Okay. Hillary.
B.
B. Michael Deaker.
A.
Alexa.
I'm going to go for B, but I do understand its risks, and I am a little bit worried that I should be somewhere else, but I'm going to go for B.
I have to say I'm bloody caught now as well. I'm heading towards B, I think. Carmen,
B.
but it's a different B from other people's Bs. Gary's away. Michael Laws.
B.
Kevin.
I won't say you're a big B. Just a normal size B.
Andrew Noon.
B.
Gretchen.
A.
Brian.
I just need clarification. When you say different, there's only one B, and that's what's written in the report.
Oh,
not
no,
page-
sweetheart. It's my interpretation of who goes on the panels. That's a private sort of.
Yeah.
And I'm holding the rest of these councillors to account that we've actually bending over to fulfil their desires. I'll go for B.
Kate.
I'm going for B, but since we're all commenting about it, I'm doing it so that the community, not me, gets to what they need and desire.
That's what worries me. Okay. At the moment, we have knocked out C, people. Okay, we have knocked out C. So we're talking between B and A. Anybody want to comment?
I'd like to move
Alexa?
option B.
Hang on, Alexa.
I just want to quickly comment because I didn't comment in the other round, and I would normally go for A, and I want to go for B, mainly because the RPS, the last process, didn't work. Basically, it didn't do its job. So, and also we have a lot of councillors who are very unhappy about not putting in an extra layer on the omnibus, or even PC7 for that matter. So I'm cautious in going for B, but I'm going to do it to see what happens. And I know we shouldn't really be experimenting in that way, but I think it's probably the best way forward in this case. So I'm going to support B.
Can I speak?
Who's can I speak?
Michael.
Michael
Laws.
Michael Dennis.
Go for it, Michael Laws.
Thank you. In my view, A would be a disaster. It would confirm every worst suspicion of the ORC that it's our way or the highway, and that we're not interested in listening to different groups, different ideas, different viewpoints before we make up our own minds. B is clearly the most democratic, and it is clearly the preference of 9 of 11 councillors here. I like the idea of having reference groups chosen by both staff and councillors, and that my only caveat to that would be that the council as a whole needs to sign off on the membership of those reference groups. Yeah.
God. Okay, any other comments? I mean,
Well,
Kevin.
Yeah, I'll make a
No,
comment.
hang on, Brian, for a minute. Andrew, I'm calling him Kevin as usual. Andrew.
Yeah, look, I feel that I need to respond to you, Madam Chair, with regards to your comments about reference groups and opportunity for local consultants and jobs for mates. I think that's what you insinuated, and that really concerns me. I just want to reinforce what Kate has just said about this is a process about the people, the community, the region. And I'll be the first person to put my hand up. I wouldn't want a bar of any involvement in any way, shape or form with a reference group or even sitting in or anything like that. I've got no interest in that. But what I have an interest in is to ensure that this process is efficient, to ensure that there aren't unintended consequences, and, you know, an opportunity to resolve some complex matters. And I guarantee there'll be plenty of complex matters that won't be able to be resolved, but at least it will have an opportunity, a forum to work on some of those sorts of issues.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I didn't mean to, and I'm sorry, I really must apologise. It wasn't about mates' rates or anything like that. It is just that what I've observed so far, even at those open meetings that we had, that one in Balclutha, that it was one part of the community came in. Now, I know it's open for everybody, but it seems that regional councils in particular, and this is what Canterbury experienced, get taken up by one side of it. And so when I initially read this, I thought, beaut, there's a chance there for some really good insect people, water people, people who have knowledge, not just opinion. And what I'm scared about is that that half of the councillors going for B see it as, I want the opinion of these groups represented, rather than my view, which is I want the knowledge of a full range of groups represented. And so, and that to me was borne out just then by Councillor Laws saying, I want to have these people approved by the full council before we go. And I thought, doozy, here we go. Here's another fight, you know, and that's what makes me so nervous.
You're nervous about democracy.
No, it's not. It's about manipulation. Brian.
I said my preferred option was B, but only on the basis of the words that are written down there. And the selection process has been made quite clear and quite fair. It says that the process of selection for a reference group would be undertaken by a selection panel featuring 2 elected members and 2 ORC staff, 1 executive member. And that there's nothing in there about council approval because it needs to have some neutrality and independence. And I mean, this is not, you know, there it is. That's the B I'm voting for, not something that somebody wakes up in the middle of the night and changes the rules.
Gwyneth, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to I guess, bring to your attention, if we did go down the path that Councillor Law suggested, that might actually impact timelines to come back to a full council to seek approval. We could look at additional meetings, but I guess we're exacerbating the risk that we've already outlined in the report.
Okay, people. If I take a vote now, which says those voting for A or those voting for B, do the same jobs I've just done, acknowledging that we're doing it as per set out in this report. So it wouldn't necessarily be Michael coming back to another meeting. Okay, those voting. Hillary, what do you...
Sorry, does Kate want to put her motion? Kate had foreshadowed a motion or something. There's no...
Okay, Kate, you've got a motion that says councillor accepts option B, seeks staff to reassess savings. Council expresses a preference for Otago-based facilitators. What do you mean by facilitators?
They're the people that facilitate the meetings. It's their role is written up in the reports, and it's just, it literally is. We're not going to be able to get regional people around very easily, and I'm just emphasising the need for us to be looking at local people because we need to create local jobs at the moment, and it is absolutely a reaction to COVID. But that's fine. Take that out. I am interested if Gwyneth wants to talk about councillor sponsorship of the forum meetings. I found it really, really helpful to be in the room. I don't think I got in the way of the discussions, but I found it really helpful to be both in Tapanui, Tapanui and Balclutha. Yeah, and to hear what those discussions are. And that was the point of having us, if we're on a roll that means that it would be relevant to be there, then I think it's really helpful to have us in the room. But I'm happy if that's not in there. I had taken it from Gwyneth that it wasn't a bad idea.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Who's Madam Chairing me?
Michael Laws.
Okay, Michael, go for it.
Sorry, can I please add a 5th motion then that will solve the problem that you've raised? And that is that the councillor reps for the reference groups be the chair and deputy chair of Policy and Strategy Committee.
Yes, you can add that. That's the 5th one. So I've got a problem at the moment, people. I've got a problem which is approves one of the program options, but we've got A or B or B, Kate.
Kate's withdrawn it.
I didn't withdraw it. I'm just asking Gwyneth. I actually asked Gwyneth the question, did she support having councillors in the room or not? If it's going to be too hard, then don't. But I thought...
Yep, I was just trying to wait for the opportunity to speak. So, yes, I guess from a part staff perspective, more than happy to have a councillor there. The reason I use the term sponsor is that we've, as per the report, we've looking to get an expert facilitator to run the sessions, and I guess, a set of ears from a council member who could bring that back to the council table is welcome.
Good.
Okay, so we are going to vote on A, B, or B, Kate. Is that fair enough, people? To do it?
And Michael's additional.
That's a different motion. That's down further. We're only on motion 3, approving one of the programs. So I'm going through. Louis, what are you voting for?
B, Kate.
B, Kate. Michael Deaker.
B.
Alexa.
B, Kate.
Marion. B. Carmen.
B, Kate.
Gary's not here. Michael Laws.
A B, Kate.
Kevin.
Same, B, Kate.
Andrew.
B.
Gretchen.
B.
Brian Scott.
B.
Kate Wilson.
To be or not to be, I am Kate, but Kate, be Kate.
Okay, on my counts, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for B, Kate. 1, 2, 3, 4 for B, and 1 for A. Is that correct? Is that what you get?
No, no one voted for A, so it was 6-5 BK.
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought
that's correct.
somebody A. Gretchen.
No.
Oh, sorry.
B.
B, I'm sorry, I misread that. Okay, so therefore it's B, Kate. Now, okay, I've got a real problem because, so we accept it just as that is written there. Okay, that's been accepted. That's how you voted. 4, notes and approves. If option B or C is approved, B, Kate, additional funding is unbudgeted, approximately 180, and part of B, Kate's was that we were going to reassess some savings. So God knows how I do this one. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this motion, please?
I'll move it.
Okay.
Seconded. Seconded.
And all those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? That's carried. Number 5, notes that the approved program will be included in the update to be provided to the Minister at the end of April. Can I have a mover?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Speaker. Andrew,
Second.
second. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Okay, then they come to Michael's one. Michael would like to reread yours again, please.
Sure, Madam Chair. That the councillor representatives on the reference group be the chair and deputy chair of the Policy and Strategy Committee.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Just before you do, I'm a bit puzzled. There's more than one reference group. There are a whole lot of them.
There's 2, isn't there?
No, it's not a lot.
No, there's
13.
about 8. Okay.
Have we not sorted this by doing B, Kate? That's why I thought we were doing B, Kate, because you've got some council representation that can come back. Why does it need to go elsewhere? That's what I had.
Through you, Chair, I thought Councillor Laws was asking that the chair and deputy chair be the 2 councillor members doing the assigning people to the groups.
Yeah, the selection.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Yes.
On selection group. Okay. Who moved and seconded that?
Michael moved and Michael seconded.
Laws,
Yes,
Bardika.
it is.
Yep.
Mike, just
Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? Carried. Can I just say that I declared myself to be that neutral word, what's it called?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Abstain. I really am tired. Okay, thank you. All right, can we move now? That's fast. Can we move then, please, to the last item on the agenda?
Happy to move with the addition of that stuff that we've just added in.
what, the progress report to the minister?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Kate receives a report, approves the report, and notes the next report on the 31st of October. It's
Seconded,
moved-
Andrew.
And yeah,
Sorry, sorry,
I'd just like a comment before the vote.
just hang on a minute. Did I get a seconder?
Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Trevor.
Here's Kate. Andrew, Hillary, and then Brian.
There's a statement in the middle of the report that says something like that we took the omnibus plan to the point of notification or something like that. I think it would be more accurate to say to the staff presenting the report for notification to the council. It's a question of whether it was at the point of notification, but.
Is this in the letter or is it in the, can you
It's
just?
point 8 of the report, paragraph 8.2.
8.2, considerable progress has been in particular.
It's also in the letter, Marion.
Is it in the letter, is it?
Yeah.
Somebody like to comment, because I'm.
It's in the top of the second page, third page.
So through you, Chair, if I can just comment, the reason it's phrased that way, Councillor Calvert, is because the progression to the EPA is at the point of notification, and the staff had undertaken all the steps as set out in section 143 of the Act to achieve notification. Hence why it's phrased that way.
Yes, so and
that's the
what
question.
I'm saying is that the staff had done all their bit, but this is a letter to the minister for us from the council, not just a report from the staff, isn't it? And if it's a report from us all, not just staff, then we as a council didn't do that. The staff has done everything they had to do up till then. So if it was a staff report if it is a staff report to the minister, then yes, the staff have done that. If it isn't a staff report to the minister, then we didn't have it at the point of notification.
Hillary,
slightly differently.
Sorry, Sue, I'll just have a go first.
Yeah.
I'll attempt to say that there are a lot of things that we don't always do, but which the staff do, we have responsibility for. And as such, we have responsibility for the work that they did, section 32 and 4 and 3 and all those things. So that's why it's almost like you say, you know, you have to take responsibility for the work that they have done. We didn't personally do that work, and we never would personally do that work.
Yes, but what I'm saying is it's more clear if we, there was two roles going on there. There was the role of the staff to get it to that point, which they absolutely had done everything to that point. And then there was our role in the notification. And the question is, since it's a letter that comes from that conglomerate, certainly we are responsible at some level for whatever is. I'm not trying to say the staff were outside anything like outside the brief. I was just saying it would be a wee bit clearer if it didn't say us telling the minister that we're at the point of notification.
The person signing the letter is the CE, it's not the chairman.
Yeah.
Well, she can't be at the point of notification unless we have been.
So
Can I go to Gwyneth and then to Sarah?
Just a point of clarification, the actual letter, the table and the top of page 3 says the omnibus plan change has been developed to the point of notification by staff and has now officially been called in by the minister.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, sorry, Marion, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think that's why the letter is said like that, because by the time you got to consider whether or not you were going to notify the omnibus plan change, you had been basically the minister had taken over the process. So,
yeah. Okay, so we're back now to the original motions. Okay, which are that we receive this report, that we approve the report to the minister, and we note the next report, and that has been moved. Sorry, Brian.
It's just in relation to the information that's provided. Like, the minister's not a foal, and we shouldn't treat him as such, unless I've missed something. where we talk about in terms of capacity, we've got an extra 2 staff here and an extra 1 staff there, without actually any indication really of the total number of staff that we've got, or even any inference whether a staff member leaves or not. It's just like it seems to me it's like a good news story, and maybe that's all it is. But if it was me, I would have a separate column to actually give a context that there's actually X number of science staff, X number of consenting staff, so everybody knows exactly what's going on.
Are you looking at the same graph that I'm looking at?
I'm looking at, for example, I'm looking at a table on page 145.
Yep, and it says 2 current officers to fill vacancies in freshwater and land, RPS, air and coast teams respectively.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say is, well, 2, but to give an indication of, you know, we're telling the good news in terms of the extra 2 staff. We don't mention if a staff member's left. And it would be good to give a context about what the total staff number is, so the minister can look at it and say, yes, they've got the horsepower, not that they've just recruited 2 extra staff.
So if we said 2 additional staff to the number, to the, you know, takes the total to something rather.
Yeah, or whatever. Thank
Is that
you.
all right?
Well, I think
Yeah.
sorry
Yeah.
if I can help. The original staff numbers were what were quoted in the Skelton report, I think, by memory.
Yeah, but nevertheless.
He referred to those. We can do that though. Where we're saying 2 additional staff, they're genuine additions. They're not replacements of people who have left or anything like that. They are genuine additions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, dear. Where am I back to? I'm back to who moved this and seconded. Oh, Kevin, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, look, just a wee thing on page 145 at the top, science. Just one wee typo there. You've got completed consultation. It should be completed consultation.
Yep, thank you. Yep. Okay.
Then I'm happy to move it if there's no one else has moved it.
Kevin, thank you.
Kate's got a mover. Kate moved it and Councillor Noon seconded.
Apologies.
Thank you. Therefore, I'm going to take all 4 of them together. Okay, by people?
Yes.
Oops, I've just lost it again. Receiving, approving and noting. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 And against? I believe it's carried. So that, therefore, is the end of the meeting. Okay. What I
Well
would
done.
like, Sarah, is very shortly, I think that we've got, we've generated quite a lot of activity today in terms of what we want in reports, particularly around recovery and biosecurity and stuff like that.
Is the meeting concluded and I should stop the live stream?
No, you can just listen, leave it open. So therefore, I think that we need very shortly a list of dates and possible dates, because we may have to schedule in some extra different meetings. Would people agree? There's quite a lot of work being generated.
Yes, there is.
Okay. I declare the meeting closed. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.